Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka The Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello and good evening, everyone. How are you all doing?
And I'm your host, last time Lil Wannabe, the brainstorm of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
Good. And yes, we will be covering The Thing, the shot heard around the world, so to speak, because I kind of insisted that we cover it.
Much to my dismay.
It was dominating the entire week's news cycle. I felt like if we didn't cover it, we weren't doing our job properly.
To be fair, it's only it's like only one order.
Two.
Okay.
But yeah, because we live in a world where pop culture cannot ever exist without politics in it. Yes, there are still pop culture oriented ways in which it was relevant. So, yep, we will do those.
All right. Okay. Give me 1 second. Just want to see this is okay. Excuse me. Just had dinner, so.
Yeah.
I just TV dinner with chicken nuggets and dinosaur potato things.
Surprised the nuggets weren't also dino themed.
It's like that Michelini TV dinner things.
Ah.
Yeah. So originally this is from that parkplace.com. Obviously I'm using an archive version.
Mm-hmm.
Kotaku senior editor Alyssa Mercant. If I say your name's wrong, I'm sorry.
We can't do names, folks. Right. He is completely and utterly inept at using names.
If I read them, if I hear them, obviously I can pronounce them. It's hard to tell how to pronounce something when you're just reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Anyway,
Kotaku senior editor Alyssa Mercant mocks attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. This was published July 13th, 2024, and this is written by John F. Trent, who I believe has done work for Bounty in the Comics as well.
Yes, and I believe we've also run into him a couple of times on this show too. If I recall correctly, he is the one who has to counter moralize by bringing religion and everything into it. I kind of hope he doesn't bring it into this, but I'm sure he will at some point.
I think that was just one article.
Okay, it may have been. In which case,
right? It was for that. It was for that. Wasn't it for that overly religious website we looked at? That was the article he had written. I can't remember. It was like a couple months back, I think.
It may have been. I don't know. But I'm hoping
Anyway.
that he can get through covering this topic without being a Bible thumper. I am crossing my fingers and hoping that he can get through this topic without being a Bible thumper. Because
I'd also say,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you're also crossing your fingers, I also say cross your eyes, but you kind of already are.
Yes, I know, I have a lazy eye. There's nothing I can do about it. But,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that came off as me being an asshole, but
no, it's fine. It is the right kind of assholeness, because it's the kind of shit we give each other all the time. It's fine. But my point, or what I was saying, is I still operate on the principle that authoritarian moralism shouldn't be welcome no matter which side it's on, and thus society would be better as a whole if all morality was banished to the private sphere and not allowed in the public sphere, or at least frowned upon in the public sphere. But I'm weird like that. So hopefully we can make it through this without getting a biblical diatribe. I am crossing my fingers.
All right. Kotaku senior editor Alyssa Mercant mocked the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. Mercant took to X, where she posted a photo of a stormtrooper and wrote, "Trump shooter revealed." Okay.
The joke, of course, being that stormtroopers have terrible aim.
Stormtroopers can't aim. I don't see how that's a problem.
Because it's implying that she wishes that the shooter had better aim. I mean, I don't see it as a problem either, necessarily, but I can see why someone who is more of a dyed-in-the-wool, Trump supporter would find that a bit timing sensitive. Like, maybe,
Okay.
2 or 3 years from now, when everything is calmed down a bit, then you could get away with a joke like that. But this was within hours after the actual thing had happened, and he was still in the hospital at the time. So yeah, I can definitely see why the bad taste implication is there. At least she didn't come right out and say it like Destiny did, where he said he felt conflicted about it and shit, and then went on to say that he wished the shooter had better aim or some shit. But it's definitely in bad taste.
All right, moving on.
Yep.
In another post, she referenced Fallout's combat system and wrote, "He didn't use VATS." Then there's from a user known as Grums, who shows a photo of her post. Did you tweet and delete this, Alyssa Merck? At Alyssa Merck, yeah. Mercant would also respond to ex-user Shark Teeth, who shared a similar sentiment to her by describing the shooter as a stormtrooper. She responded to his post, writing, "LMAO, I literally wrote literally, I am assuming, very weirdly."
Yeah, people fucking need to get more literate. Like, seriously, I can't with this.
LMAO, I literally tweeted this. Okay, I don't care. I don't. Whatever. I don't see how that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, Mercant posted the same image of the stormtrooper getting questioned. Why did someone report this? LMAO.
Honestly, because of timing. Because you're implying that you wish he had better aim in, like, mere hours after it happened. Which, again, is a lot more defensible than coming right out and saying you wish he had better aim, which I've seen a lot of people doing. And those people are ideological nitwits and scum. But even so, I can see why I can see why, in the aftermath of something as history making as Trump almost got assassinated and only made it out by the literal skin of his ear. I can see why some people would be annoyed at that, and I can see why it's definitely a joke in bad taste. Then again, there are many more people who are just coming right out and saying that they wish he had been a better shot. So I would be more mad at those people and less mad at the people who tried to make a slightly awkward meme about it. But again, I can understand why someone who is more emotionally invested in, the Trump wing of the Republican Party would take that as a little bit offensive, considering that the man just got shot, not to mention the guy who actually did die, the volunteer firefighter who died defending his family from bullet fire. So, yeah. Moving on.
Mocking the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. I'm not. You know what? No, I'm not going to address that. Not going to correct that. I don't care enough to. Shows just how low McCann's character is. However, despite how despicable behavior is, we still heed Christ's command to love our enemies, and we can do this by praying for her. Okay, so I stand corrected, Dalton.
Yeah, we apparently can't make it out without a little bit of counter moralism. Now, mind you, I have nothing particularly there's nothing particularly wrong with that sentiment, but you should be able to express that level of empathy for your fellow man without defaulting to a scriptural justification for it. Like common sense or common decency, or how mirror neurons that function correctly should be able to get you there without, but my God said so, therefore. But again, like I said, I'm weird in the fact that I think the world would be a better place if both the left wing, neo-Hegelians, SJWs, and critical theorists were banished to the private sphere, and the moralistic tradcon evangelicals also were obliged to keep their shit in the private sphere, and the public sphere could be, moralism free. But again, I'm weird like that. So maybe I'm the asshole. Moving on.
Okay. Father Hugh Barbaro Preum. I think that's how you say it. Again, I'm bad with names. I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Father Hugh Barber Preum explains, so love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. I feel like that's a bit of an over exaggeration.
Yeah, that's a bit loaded, I would think. Persecution,
Not that I
no.
disagree with the sentiment, obviously.
No, the sentiment is fine, other than the fact that you shouldn't have to get you shouldn't have to get trapped in a holy book every time you have a moral quandary. But
Okay, to be fair, Don, you have a very heated relationship with Christianity, so
this is also true. But point being, apart from the fact that you probably shouldn't get stuck in a holy book every time you have a moral quandary, there's nothing wrong with that sentiment, other than the fact that to call it persecution might be a little bit heavy-handed. In this one instance, now I understand what he's getting at, in the sense that they've been calling Trump everything but the devil for 8 fucking years. So I understand why this seems like the last straw in a series of, multiple straws, because I mean, they did literally take shots at the dude. So maybe that's more of what he's getting at, the ongoing cultural persecution of Trump being called a Nazi, a fascist, a theocrat, and every other, negative name a chap can unload. for 8 years, and then this is just the straw that broke the camel's back. But in and of itself, the Stormtrooper meme is, I think, at worst in bad taste, and at best in extremely, extremely bad timing. So, like, seems a bit odd to react to that with persecution, but again, maybe he's saying in context of the 8 years prior to the actual shooting, and now people mocking the fact that he was shot, which I guess is more fair. Moving on, though.
All right. He adds, "We have to reach out and take the initiative to love those who are enemies, who have harmed us. Now, our Lord in forgiving prayer, as the first way of doing this, frees us from any excuses or self-deception, because that's the one thing we can always do for someone who hurts us, is pray for them, pray for their well-being."
I mean, a fair sentiment, I suppose. And good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't agree with that because you are a petty motherfucker. No offense.
It's a little bit condescending, and that's the danger of this kind of pray for those who I don't like attitude. It often results in you being sort of morally up your own ass and exceedingly condescending. For example, if you were to tell me that you were praying for me, my request is that you wouldn't, because I'm not really on speaking terms with the God of Abraham. And the defining issue for me is, if you say you're going to pray for me and then I ask you not to, will you actually take my request not to seriously or not? And this guy seems like the kind of guy who would pray for you anyway out of spite, more so than out of forgiveness. Because too many people who, use prayer in this kind of passive aggressive way will less pray out of actual genuine forgiveness and more almost pray out of spite. And I do have a slight issue with the people who will passive aggressively pray out of spite, especially if you ask them politely not to. But I understand, at least in theory, where he's coming from. Again, I would prefer that we could discuss things like ethics and morality without shoving a Bible into the middle of it every time. But again, I'm weird like that. I think the world would be better off if morality was a personal choice that people kept to the private sphere, more or less, and therefore the public sphere could be more irreverent. But again, I might just be I might just be the asshole in this situation.
I think morality has always been a very complicated topic of discussion.
Yeah, shit's complicated.
So.
Who knew? But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it anyway.
All right. Given just how close the bullet came to assassinating a former president and leading contender for the White House, and given what that would have done to our society and to the world, perhaps is an appropriate time to contemplate providence, kindness, and repentance more than ever before. What do you make of Mercant's comments? I mean, full honesty, I don't. Timing was a very bit, and maybe a little tone deaf.
Yeah, she's a bit of a bitch for making that comment. But it's nowhere near as bad as some of the other reactions to the shooting that I've seen. And your sort of final statement there is fine. I just wish you could get there without defaulting to my holy book, because I consider it kind of a sign of maturity that you can develop moral opinions of your own instead of defaulting to, but the authority says X. I find that to be a very overly simplistic way of approaching ethical issues. I'm not going to take it away from you, but I am going to at least comment that it would be nice if we could have conversations relating to morality without defaulting to the authority says X, Y, or Z.
Okay.
Mhm.
Give it a second. It's still loading.
Speaking of more over-the-top reactions to the recent shot heard around the world, the comic book industry exists, and several of the people in it are twats. So, predictably, they twatted themselves.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think, okay. There we go. Present. So I'm using the archive version, but this was originally from bleedingfool.com, not to be confused with Bleeding Cool. This was more or less, bleedingfool.com is more or less the opposite in terms of Bleeding Cool.
It's the anti-SJW equivalent of Bleeding Cool, effectively. The parody of Bleeding Cool that focuses on aspects of the medium that Bleeding Cool probably wouldn't touch or would have the opposite take on. Speaking of which, yeah.
Oh, and just to mention this, we have covered Bleeding Full in the past. We don't do it often because most of the time there's nothing that they make that would really be on our radar. I mean, mostly it is like comic news stuff, but
yeah, the same is very much true of Bounding into Comics. Usually we don't cover them because we more or less agree with them, and so there's less room for like commentary than there would be in the alternative.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I would like to use these sites more just as a way to like, give them some more light.
Yeah. I try not to suggest them because I want to at least make a attempt at being unbiased, and if we got all of our news or most of our news from a site that we already agree with,
it wouldn't feel fair.
That would be at least more likely to be considered biased than not. Yeah, plus, again, there's not much room for commentary when you mostly agree with something that someone says. So, granted, we have before, and we probably will again, split hairs when we are covering things like this to see where we agree and where we disagree. But even that would get tiresome after a while if we were, constantly mostly agreeing but splitting tiny irrelevant hairs all the time.
All right, shall we?
Yep.
Sorry, a little tired. Mainstream comics must die. Comic book creators make light of Trump assassination attempt. Written by Victor James, published July 15th, 2024.
I can't say that I'm surprised, given that the majority of comic book creatives in today's day and age are ideologically possessed morons. And I don't foresee that opinion of mine changing anytime soon.
All right. This is a quoted, pictured photo of a tweet by Melanie Mac Go Boom. I think I've seen like a couple of her videos. Not really something I'm into. Nothing against the YouTuber. Obviously, it's just like it's not really my thing.
Mhm.
It says, "Not today, Satan, Trump 2024." Okay. I don't know what to say to that. Recently, one of my favorite YouTubers, your boy Zach, lamented that the so-called anti-SJWs want all modern culture to die. And to this I say yes.
See, here's where I start disagreeing, I guess. I didn't realize this was even a thing in this article. But I find myself oddly agreeing with your boy Zach. The approach that a lot of people take is they are okay with or even gleeful at our culture dying as long as the enemy goes down with them. Or it's a mindset we often refer to as being black pilled. It's essentially giving in to nihilism. And I agree with your boy Zach in the sense that I don't want Marvel or DC Comics to crash and burn or become financially bankrupt or to go bust or stop existing or anything. I would like the characters that I enjoy from Marvel and DC to go back to being respected as the characters they are and not used as pawns in some kind of moral or socio-political game. Granted, it doesn't seem likely that they will learn that lesson unless they face a little bit of hardship in the interim, but I don't want to have to replace Marvel and DC. Even though we, Brainstormer and I are working on our own spin on Marvel and DC, respectively. In one case, the Lionhearted universe, and in the other case, the Paragon Pantheon universe. But at no point did I even have the thought that they could replace, or that I even wanted them to replace, modern day Marvel or DC. I want Marvel and DC to get their shit together and stop being ideologically biased idiots. I don't want them to go bust. But there is a certain percentage of people on our side, essentially, who would rather see every IP get ruined and reboot itself than see it learn its lesson and get good again. And on that point, I guess I find myself agreeing with your boy Zach. Anyway, moving on.
Recently, one of my favorite YouTubers, the 2016 election of Donald Trump broke the mainstream comic industry. Everyone should already be aware of the absolute meltdown that followed, which involved a whisper network working behind the scenes to purge the industry of anyone who supported Trump. 8 years later, this extreme form of Trump derangement syndrome persists to this day.
I mean, it wasn't just Trump derangement syndrome. It definitely was, at least in part, Trump derangement syndrome. But this attitude within the creative industry predates Trump. Like, Gamergate was 2013. In many ways, you could make the argument that movements like Gamergate and Comicsgate and the Fandom Menace sort of resulted in the election of Trump to begin with. And then, of course, the industries all respectively went insane because he was the embodiment of everything that the establishment doesn't like. And so they treated him like Hitler or a theocrat or a Nazi or a fascist or what have you. Which is wrong, by the way, but if we're being entirely honest with ourselves, the attitude known as anti-social justice predates Trump by at least 3 years and may have been one of the catalysts for the election of Trump in the first place. Anyway, that's less of a point of disagreement and more just a point of clarification for the sake of historical accuracy. Anyway, moving forward.
LaRose of Fandom Pulse recently published an article just a day after the assassination of Trump. usual suspect in the Whisper Network let be known, where the priorities were the former president and current winner was nearly murdered. Heather Anthos, I'll just leave this here with a GIF of Sidious from Revenge of the Sith in my life.
Ugh.
Jules or
I saw a lot of people making Darth Sidious references after Trump survived to specifically this scene. My dear people, that means you're equating Donald Trump to a goddamn Sith Lord. Do you think that's an accurate comparison? And to be charitable, at least some of the people who made this joke are just referencing the fact that, Sidious used his injuries for political clout, and Trump is probably going to use his injury for political clout. But here's the thing. In the one case, Sidious was fucking lying. In the one case, his injuries were self-inflicted due to the corruption of his own Force Lightning. In the other case, Trump literally was 2 inches away from dying. And when you survive getting shot at, far be it from me to be overly charitable, but yeah, he does deserve to at least maybe profit from surviving being shot at. Because when you almost die, if you then get a positive windfall from almost dying, given that it was, almost dying that you had to pay to get this windfall, I think you're justified in having it. Like, when you publicly almost die, you get to be at least a little bit smug about the fact that you survived almost dying. I think that's more than reasonable. That, 2 inches difference and he would have been actually dead. So yeah, no, he gets to milk this a little bit. I don't think it's cynical or opportunistic of him to do that. I think that's just him making the best out of a bad situation.
Right. But on.
Yeah.
Another quoted tweet here: "Liberals, Donald Trump, and Project 2025 are an existential threat. Also, liberals, get well soon, sir."
I mean, yes, that dissonance is definitely a thing. For the last 9 years, and I say 9 because it probably started in 2015 when he announced that he wanted to be elected in 2016. For the last 9 years, give or take a month or two, they have thrown every negative term that you can think of at this man. They've called him a fascist, they've called him a Nazi, they've called him a theocrat, they've called him a white supremacist, they've called him alt-right, they've called him just about everything but a demon. And the only reason they haven't called him a demon is because most of the people who hate him are non or even anti-religious. But they've called him every secular equivalent of demon and then some. That's for sure. And it's been in every vector of culture you care to name. In the news media, in journalism, both in print and online, in the entertainment media, there were parodies and like hate pieces of him out the wazoo, several of which we've covered over the years, because we started this channel in 2019, and there have been a lot of articles that have basically been everyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi, fascist, theocratic son of a bitch, etc., and so on. So yeah, it is a bit surreal that the people who swore up and down that he was a threat to democracy are now, at least some of them, realizing what the fuck they almost did. And yes, I will blame the media and the journalism profession and academia for this, at least somewhat, because you called him every secular equivalent of demon you could for 9 years. And then when someone finally, internalizes that message and goes, well, if he's a threat to democracy and a wannabe dictator, I'm just going to take him out then. you want to act as though you didn't have anything to do with it. And that's a bit silly. Because everyone and their dog tried to demonize this man for years and years and years and years. And now that someone took it seriously, you're finally realizing, oh wait, we might be culpable for this. Shit. Yeah.
So, okay, you done?
Yeah, moving on.
Yeah. All right, some more tweets. Mark Waid should be working instead. Sorry. Pray that shooter was wearing an RFK Jr. T-shirt.
Because otherwise we might be held responsible for it.
RFK?
Ronald F. Kennedy Jr. He's running as a third-party candidate.
If you just tuned in, some fucking idiot with shitty eyesight just clinched the election for Trump. Fuck.
In other words, Mark Waid is pretty much calling the shooter bad at shooting and wishes he would have been a better shot.
I got that.
Yeah. Mark Waid is fucking deranged, and we've gone into how Mark Waid is fucking deranged.
I am curious if you ever want to review some of his more recent comic books, like the that Super Antifa one about kids getting powers from a school shooting deal.
Oh my god, I forgot that existed.
What was it? Ignited? No,
I think.
Wait.
I think so. Something like that.
Well, to be fair, I don't think we can do better than like some other comic book YouTubers have done when it was coming out.
It's been mocked everywhere from hell and back, and that's fine, and it deserves to be mocked because, by God, Mark, the ideology has stolen your brain. But like,
it's weird because sorry, we're gonna go on a tangent here, but it's weird to me, like with the SJW, like comic books, like original properties they're trying to do that talk. Well, I say talk, obviously in air quotes. Talk about certain issues within the world. It's never in depth, nor does it when people say comics have always been political, I'm not necessarily. I know it's stupid, but I'm not necessarily going to disagree. I think the difference, why people are complaining now rather than before, and a lot of people miss this, and I think I've said this before, but the issue with today's like comics that introduce like political talking points and stuff, they present an idea. They present it as a fact. They present it as this is what what the world should be. Like they're preaching, right?
The way I've often
hold on.
Sorry.
But back then, and even like some more indie stuff, more or less, they either ask the audience, they ask questions for the audience to make up their own answers, or they present the topic of discussion in a way that is tied directly to the characters, the world. It feels organic. It feels like it's not shoehorned, which is also another problem, but I digress. So that, and going back to the point I originally started, was a lot of SJW comics, not all of them, I will preface this, but a lot of them have interesting ideas or concepts that have a lot of potential, but because the writers, the creators of those comics are so stuck in their ideologies, so absolutely assured that they're right, instead of trying to propose a discussion, that is where the stories and the books fail, in my personal opinion.
The way I usually phrase it when this topic comes up, and the reason I don't particularly like the everything is political party line, is I chalk it up to the difference between politics and philosophy. Politics is we have already derived the singular correct answer to this issue, and therefore anyone who disagrees with us must be the lowest common denominator straw man possible. Philosophy is this is still an open question, so let us present as three-dimensional a picture of this issue as we can. And yes, to Brainstormer's point, the old school writers believed in the concept of meritocracy. And so as a result, they would strive to create a perspective that made sense by the in-universe logic or in-universe mechanics of the storytelling and the characters and the world it exists in itself, as opposed to now where, one, it's politics rather than philosophy, and two, art is not an end in itself. It is only ever a socio-political or moral means to an end, and so therefore we are justified in throwing out any sort of in-universe logic or in-universe character justification and warping the characters and world in service to we have derived the singular correct answer to this issue and no other answers need to even be treated as though they are semi-valid.
Mm-hmm.
So I phrase it as it's the difference between philosophy and politics. Yesterday's comics were philosophical in nature in that they presented open questions and tried at least to offer three-dimensional characterizations or in-universe justifications for the stories they wanted to tell. Whereas now the storytelling is overtly political, which translates to we already have the singular one valid correct answer, so let's mock all the other answers and strawman the shit out of them, because who would ever be so stupid as to disagree with our singular correct answer?
So I basically said in like a roundabout way then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyway, moving forward.
You may say these are just a handful of people and don't speak for the industry at large. In fact, John highlights how Gail Simone, who allegedly part of the Whisper Net, also allegedly part of the Whisper Network, was the voice of reason in the industry. Okay, just cut up with the shooting thing. It may be weird, but I'm going to wait until we know more about before freaking out. This is bad. It shouldn't happen. Good fortune to us all.
I mean, good for Gail Simone for at least being sane. Because it's not just that I disagree with people like Mark Waid, although I do. It's that they are so in their ideology. They're so bought and sold by their ideology that they can't even see how insane they sound when they jump to these kind of statements. Whereas Gail Simone, at least in this instance, is stable enough to go, hold on a minute, before I go down the ideological rabbit hole, guns a-blazing, possibly literally, bad phrasing on my part maybe, but before I go down the ideological rabbit hole and burn all my bridges, let's stop and think and be human for a second. And I do, and Jordan Peterson likes the phrase ideological possession to describe this mindset, where it gets to the point where you as an individual, you as a person, are no longer doing the thinking. The ideology is doing the thinking before, for you on your behalf. And I have to admit that there's something I've always liked about that phrase as well. But this is the difference between someone who is full tilt ideologically possessed like Mark Waid versus someone who believes in an ideology and, very fervently believes in the ideology, but it can at least separate herself from the ideology enough to still be human some of the time. Whereas Mark Waid appears to have given his entire soul over to his ideology. He doesn't even realize how much of an optics fail it is that he said what he said. Which is a shame, because once upon a, 20 or 30 years ago, Mark Waid was a decent artist. Now he's ideology wearing a person suit. It's sad when that happens. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Being used to having to backpedal from unhinged comments, Mark Waid also gave his usual non-apology for saying something heinous. Because right-wing lunatics and Comicsgate incels have made a campaign today of sickly twisting my condolences about yesterday's tragedy into claims that I cheer political violence, I have deleted my post. I will never give them any fuel to spread their disgusting lies. Okay.
Mark, do you see how that's not actually a meaningful apology? Do you also see how you recontextualize what you said? Because at no point during the post we saw just now did you even approach the subject of giving condolences to the victims or indeed to Trump. You basically ideologically whined about how because Trump survived the shooting, he's now going to be more popular than ever. Wah. That's basically how your comment actually reads. And now, instead of going, holy shit, I just cheered for someone almost getting shot, and realizing that that might make you a bit of an asshole, you are now passive aggressively and begrudgingly deleting the tweet. Not even apologizing for the tweet, but just deleting the tweet because people you don't like might be able to make you look bad because you looked bad. And you didn't even admit that your original statement was wrong or bad or even could have been taken out of context. You just went straight to the people I don't like are lying about me because they are dishonest fuckwits. No admission of wrongdoing on your part. No, hold on, wait a second, someone almost died, and someone actually did die, by the way, because, there was the firefighter who literally went out like a hero defending his family and being a human shield for his family against bullets, which is as good a definition of IRL heroism as I can care to remember. None of that. None of what Gail Simone did, which is, hold on a second, before I gloat about this, should we maybe see what the fuck was going on? No, you just went from snidely bitching about how you wish the shooter had been a better shot to, oh, wah, the people I don't like are gonna frame this as though I did something wrong. Because you kind of did, but, we can't ever give the other side credit for being correct about anything, so passive-aggressive whining again. Moving on.
Right, okay. I burned my collection of Mark Waid written comics at this point if the matches didn't cost more than... Oh, I'd burn my collection of Mark Waid written comics at this point if the matches didn't cost more than the comics were worth. Okay, I feel like that's a bit overkill.
I mean, honestly, given the shit that Mark Waid just, declined twice, he can get a little bit of his own back with that comment, honestly. Like, seriously. I get what they're getting. I don't own, to the best of my knowledge, any Mark Waid comics. Even if I did, I wouldn't destroy them, because here's my approach to the people I used to have respect for becoming ideologically possessed morons. Just because Neil Gaiman, now in his 60s, conflates the punk rock movement of the 1980s and 90s with the social justice movement of today, which is a false conflation. I'm not going to destroy any of my Sandman merch. Just because Alan Moore pretty much always was the Antifa cheering asshat that the rest of the industry has only recently in the last 10 or 20 years become, that doesn't mean that V for Vendetta is a bad comic. And it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate Watchmen or The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Just because the person they are today is a terrible person, or they may have even been a terrible person from the off, like Alan Moore, that doesn't mean that the quality of their work doesn't exist, or that the work wasn't good in spite of the personal failings of the author. So I'm not going to blame Neil Gaiman's original run of the Sandman for Neil Gaiman's current opinions. I'm not going to blame the work of art that is V for Vendetta, or is Watchmen, or is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen for the personal failings of Alan Moore. I'm certainly not going to support any of his work that I do find more objectionable than it's worth. Like, for example, the Promethea comic, which is literally designed by Alan Moore to be a chaos magic spell to hasten the coming of the apocalypse. And no, Alan, I haven't forgotten nor forgiven you for that. In fact, I basically make it my business to be the anti-you whenever feasible, because you made a spell that may or may not hasten the coming of the apocalypse. That is not the actions of a sane person, occultist, magician, or not. And I'm saying that as a fellow practitioner. Sane magicians don't hasten the coming of the apocalypse. I don't know why that has to be a controversial statement, but even magicians should be sane enough to not want to bring about the apocalypse. This is very, very straightforward. But yeah, just because people who I might find personally objectionable, or might find me personally objectionable, have usually inadvertently made good shit, doesn't mean that I'm obliged to stop believing that Sandman or Watchmen or V for Vendetta or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is good shit. I can disagree with the creative behind something while still acknowledging the quality of the work as and when their work is quality. Now, mind you, that is predicated on the fundamental observation that the Neil Gaiman of 1980, or rather 1989, who wrote The Sandman, is not the man currently occasionally simping for groups like BLM and Antifa. The Alan Moore who, was a good enough artist to make a good piece of art in spite of himself in the 80s, still, doesn't make a difference to whether or not Watchmen or V for Vendetta or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen were good. Now, mind you, I'm not going to support these people when they say something overtly stupid or counterproductive, or try to self-sabotage themselves, like these people so often do by retconning their own work. But just because Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and, whomever else is a bit of an asshat, doesn't change that I was moved very much to, non-suicidality by the Sandman. Doesn't mean that I don't still regard the movie adaptation of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or of V for Vendetta to be amazing movies, even if they're, putting money in Alan Moore's pocket, and even if he doesn't like them. In fact, V for Vendetta gets more prescient as time goes by, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to disavow the work they did. I'm going to try my darndest to separate the art from the artist, because art should be valuable for its own sake, not as an egotistical extension of the author or writer's mind. And the fact that we are now living in a world where we often forget that the art is valuable regardless of the writer's intentions is somewhat sad, in my opinion. Anyway, sidebar over, moving on.
All right. All right. While the sample size for those in the comic industry making light of Trump's assassination attempt is small, people need a reminder that this is not something new. Since 2016, comic book pros have gone out of their way to promote violence in their works against Trump. Then some bleeding cool stuff here.
They did.
Sorry, not bleeding cool. Sorry, it was their Twitter thing here. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
Please continue, Ed.
Yeah, it's definitely true that the comic book industry at large did, again, much like the rest of the news media and the journalism profession and large sums of academia, tried to tar Trump with every secular equivalent of demon they could. They've made parallels to Nazis. They've made parallels to fascists. They've said he was going to be a dictator if he got in power again. They said that he was a threat to democracy, this, that, the other. And it was a borderline all-pervasive message in just about every medium of expression in the last 8 years or so. Be it the news media, be it academia, be it journalism, or be it the entertainment media, which includes both comics and other media as well. Because how many TV shows had Orange Hitler as a running gag or a running theme for years and years and years? How many movies made their evil politician a Trump stand-in, et cetera, and so on. So it is fair to say that, for example, Nick Spencer, who made Secret Empire, turned a Nazi-fied version of Captain America into Trump, or that Ta-Nehisi Coates turned Red Skull into a stand-in for Jordan Peterson, et cetera, and so on. In fact, several people that I know, as acquaintances and friends of mine, have been turned into comic book villains by writers who are frankly unhinged. There is a character called Ernst in one of Max Bemis's comics that I'm fairly certain is supposed to be a reference to Doug Ernst. I don't think anyone has gone so far as to call out my friend Englentine, other than maybe Tim Lim, who is definitely on our side of the issue. But yeah, they've been calling Comicsgate and Gamergate and the Fandom Menace every nasty, evil, toxic thing they could come up with, and also tied us to Trump by hook or by crook. So it is fair to say that the entertainment media and the journalism profession and the news media have gone out of their way to almost uniformly call Trump every evil thing they could get away with calling him, and then some. Moving on.
All right. Receipts. Eric Larson, of Savage Dragon's fame, has been a poster child for TDS. He has long made Trump the villain in his comic, which is in stark contrast to the way he portrayed President Obama.
Yeah, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, probably, of examples of media that either implicitly or explicitly demonized either Trump or people they assumed were on his side, or people they thought were on his side even when they weren't, or basically everyone who was opposed to the establishment narrative. And we've covered many, many examples over the years. How they tried to make Homelander into a Trump allegory in The Voice Season 3. And instead of transplanting the negative qualities of Homelander onto Trump, they, in large part, inadvertently transplanted a lot of the positive qualities people associate with Trump onto Homelander. Oops. But yeah, that definitely is a thing that happened. I'm kind of surprised we managed to get an adaptation of Invincible that didn't turn Omni-Man into Trump somehow. To be entirely honest with you.
Yeah, you put that out into the universe. There is a universe now where that did happen.
I'm sure it existed long before I mentioned it, but if it makes you feel any better, I will now imagine a universe crashing into that universe and destroying it utterly, and then offering that hypothetical universe to Mab.
Okay. Moving on?
Yeah.
Alright. Then let's not forget this gem he posted on Twitter, as reported by Bounty in the Comics. Erik Larsen, Donald Trump being executed for treason on the White House lawn is the closure America needs to start the healing process. The fuck?
Yeah, I know I just spent like 20 minutes giving Mark Waid shit, but Erik Larsen, you just made Mark Waid look like one of the sane ones. Because at least Mark Waid had the rhetorical talent to be at least slightly more indirect about it. And by the way, no, I don't think that would bring people closer together. I think that would result in a large percentage of half the country breaking things and burning things down, and the other half probably counter protesting them, because if the MAGA types ever did get agitated enough to protest like Antifa does, I'm sure Antifa would be right there counter protesting them. So in actuality, it'd be more like both halves of the country burning shit to the ground if Trump were actually assassinated. That's one of the reasons I'm very, very, very grateful that he didn't actually die or get severely injured. Because if he had, things would get very apocalyptic very quickly, and then I would be at least partially blaming Alan Moore for his maneuver of, hey, let's write a narrative spell to bring about the apocalypse faster. Because that's an ethical thing for a magician to do. God, I have such a chip on my shoulder about Alan Moore. It annoys me that for a lot of people, he is like their first exposure to a modern day occultist. And hashtag, we're not all like that. I just want to make that perfectly clear. I'm a practicing occultist. I've been a practicing occultist for almost, probably a little bit over 18 years now. And we're not all like that. And I know for a fact there are other magicians on my side of this issue, because Terrell Warwick, also known as Six Hexenhammer, is also a practicing occultist, and he happens to be definitely on the pro-Trump side of this issue. And for the record, I'm actually, more left wing than you would expect me to be, probably. But even I can sit here and say I would rather Trump than Biden. I would obviously rather, Bernie or someone more aligned with Bernie than Trump if that were an option. But the Democrats hate their own base, so they're always going to run establishment Democrat politicians instead of a populist left politician. So in the event that I have to choose between a right-wing populist and a left-wing corporate stooge, I will take the right-wing populist. I would love if the choice was between a right-wing populist and a left-wing populist, but the world doesn't seem to want to give me that. So if it's a choice between Trump and Biden, or Trump and Kamala, or Trump and Hillary, I will go Trump, even though I am a like Scandinavian style social democrat who is also a classical liberal in principle. But yeah, moving on.
All right. In 2016's Captain America Steve Rogers run, Nick Spencer, who said this, uh, the media collapse of 2016 is a spectacular thing to watch. Suddenly, we're pretending Trump supporters aren't racist. Also portrayed his Red Skull during his failed run as a Trump stand-in, and here is a uh, excerpt from that. Shall I read it?
Yes, why not?
Sometimes it comes from the strangest places. We grow in number each time I visit. Thank you, my friends, for your courage and dedication to our cause. I have just come from Europe, my homeland, in fact, and do you know what I saw there? It was an invading army. These so called refugees, millions of them, marching across the continent, bringing their fanatical beliefs and their war and their crime with them. They attack our women and bomb our cities. And how do our leaders respond? Do they push them back and enforce the borders, as is our sovereign duty? Of course not. They say, here, take our food, take our shelter, take our way of life, and then take our lives. Despicable.
As if that's not a sane thing for someone to say or ask for.
I mean, I wouldn't trust the Red Skull, to be
Well,
fair.
no, but what they're doing is they're taking Trump talking points or talking points that are at least adjacent to Trump, and they're putting them in the mouth of Red Skull to try and conflate Trump and Red Skull. It's similar to how in the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, they had Red Skull write a book called 10 Rules for Life as an obvious reference to Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and then they basically re-edited a Jordan Peterson speech and put it in the mouth of Red Skull. And again, I just want to point this out to any shit stirrers in the establishment media, be it entertainment or be it news related. Do you think that telling your readers nonstop for 8 years that Trump was a Nazi, a fascist, a theocrat, a alt-righter, a white supremacist, a this, a that, a the other, for 8 years and in almost one voice, do you think that might have something to do with the guy who finally went, okay, he's a threat to democracy, I'm just gonna shoot the fucker? Because in all honesty, if I'm gonna be entirely honest with you, I'm more surprised that it took this long for that to happen, with that drum being beaten so often over the years, than the fact that it happened. Because it took apparently 8 years of constant, he is the next best thing to a demon, or the next worst thing to a demon, for 8 years, for someone to finally be, triggered enough to go, okay, if he's this much of a threat, if he's this much of a wannabe dictator, if he's this much of a Nazi and a fascist and a this and a that and the other, then I'm just gonna shoot the fucker. Because that doesn't surprise me when everyone in the mainstream media, everyone in the journalism profession, or almost everyone in the journalism profession, and damn near every major entertainment IP or entertainment franchise has been beating this drum for 8 or 9 years now. So are you seeing yet how you might be somewhat culpable, and therefore you might be somewhat the baddies, for telling everyone that a 90s style business Democrat who happened to be running as a Republican and happened to have populist leanings was the second coming of Adolf Hitler for 8 years? Anyway, moving on.
Right. In the short-lived The Hellblazer Rebirth, writer Simon Oliver or Olivier also had to inject his personal politics into the comic. It started to feel like home, it really did. Believe me, in this real estate market, they don't have to. But when a racist, short fingered, failed meat salesman began circling the White House, things started to take a turn for the strange, even for me.
Okay, now just so that I can clarify this, is this Hellraiser or Hellblazer that this was set in?
Hellblazer.
Okay, so it's a John Constantine comic that got ruined in this way. Okay. I just wanted to know what level of upset I should be at this because I really enjoy both Hellraiser, the uh Lament Configuration franchise with Pinhead, and Hellblazer, the origin of my friend John Constantine. So I was trying to decide which level of my anger should be resultant here. And yeah, no, fuck you guys. John Constantine is not a toy for you to use as a mouthpiece. Neither is Pinhead if you ever decided to go full Hellraiser either, but as a general rule, fuck you people. And to further emphasize my previous point, do you think that maybe this might have something to do with why someone finally, after 8 years of this rigmarole, took a shot at the dude? And do you think maybe you might be partially culpable or partially responsible for someone getting it in their heads that Donald Trump was the second coming of Hitler or a wannabe dictator or something when he's never demonstrated any such thing in the 8 years he's been a politician? Moving on.
Alright, Spider Gwen Annual number 1 had one of the silliest and most blatant inserts when they portrayed Modak, which means a mental organism designed as America's king, so a different character than Modoc as Trump.
Wait, they actually? Oh my God, that's. I knew about Secret Empire and I knew about the Jordan Petersonification of Red Skull. I didn't know they made a brother or cousin for Modoc.
No, it's an alternate version of Modoc in Spider Gwen, in her universe, I think.
Okay, but even
Um,
so, they made a version of Modoc that was a Trump allegory. That's a new one even on me. But again, just pointing this out. Do you think that maybe 8 years of nonstop saying shit like this might have something to do? And okay, I will give it to you. If it were just the entertainment media or it was just the news media saying this shit, nothing probably would have happened because I'm not a big believer in the concept of stochastic terrorism. But when academia, the news media, the journalism profession, and the entertainment apparatuses all essentially speak from the same hymn sheet, speak with the same voice, and say this guy is every, secular demonization word we can get away with calling him for 8 to 9 years, then it might actually matter that this is the, singular message that every piece of media, be it fictional or non-fictional, is um, saying at the same time. I don't really believe in the concept of stochastic terrorism because, for the most part, I consider stochastic terrorism to just be a way to, apply guilt by association to things that are non-legally actionable or that don't actually relate to violence in any meaningful way. But when every major institution of media, be it fictional or non-fictional, is all harping on the same strawmanish, overblown, oversimplified messaging, then maybe then stochastic terrorism becomes a reasonable thing, because it's the uniformity that does it for me, honestly. The idea that almost everyone in the news media, almost everyone in journalism, and almost everyone in entertainment media all basically agreed on the same controversial issue and spoke basically with the same voice, that probably makes it more stochastic than I would otherwise be willing to grant. Moving on.
All right. Let's not forget the reaction many comic book pros had when Trump was diagnosed with COVID, and I'm not going to read all of these because I'm sick of reading these fucking Twitter
It's not
posts.
relevant to the current events as much.
No.
Yeah.
In 2021, one of my top favorite comic writers, Jim Starlin, couldn't help but project violent imagery of the president in his Dreadstar comic. You overtaxed, you're poor, persecute your you overtax your poor, persecute your minorities, molest women and children, fail to properly educate your populace, imprison or kill your political opponents, lie pathologically, shirk all responsibilities continuously, suppress your fourth estate, terrorize your neighboring planets, and all pretty much and are pretty much just an asshole in general. So I'm here to replace you with a sane leader and institute a new and fairer governing system linked by the Willow Consortium. Cut off fucking head.
Trump didn't do any of those things. Like, he never killed his political opposition. And by the way, calling the news media the fourth estate is not a good thing. The news media isn't supposed to aspire to be the fourth estate. The fourth estate is supposed to be what you call it when the media is in bed with the government too much. But you actually are framing it as a good thing to call the news media the fourth estate. Yeah, no. Not only is this complete bullshit, and yet more of the same, warmongering rhetoric against Trump, it doesn't even make your own side look good. That's the other thing about so many of these straw man comics or straw man pieces of media. They don't even end up making the side that it's supposed to be on the side of look good. It makes the side it's supposed to be on the side of look petty as shit. Not to mention irrationally hysterical for no goddamn reason. And that's if they can avoid making their own side look like fucking evil morons, like they did with Velma. But, moving on. Oh dear, we lost Brainstormer. And I must now entertain the chat while he is away. Even though I don't believe we have any chat at the moment because ET is busy. And yes, I checked, and we do not have any chats because ET is busy. But yeah, it flabbergasts me that not only did, like, news media, the journalism profession, academia, and the entertainment media all basically sing from the same hymn sheet for 8 years nonstop. They're supposed to be the side that believes in internalized cultural messaging, in stochastic terrorism, in subconscious bias, in the toxicity of poisoning the well, in the tabula rasa conception of social engineering, and so on and so on and so forth. And yet, even despite being the side that believes in all of that essentially believes in the eternal mutability of the human condition, based on subtle cultural cues, even with all that, they still grabbed a fucking blowhorn, culturally speaking, and said Trump bad, Trump fascist, Trump Nazi, Trump this, Trump that, for 8 years. And now that, someone finally internalized all of that rigmarole, which was coming from, multiple dimensions, now they realize, oh wait, shit, some of this shit we said might be actionable in this instance. Wouldn't you know it? Fuck. Hey DT, Brainstormer is currently having technical issues, so I am attempting to entertain the chat and fill the dead air again. What you missed, DT, was the pop culture repercussions of the recent shot heard around the world and uh its various outcomes. Because I brought it up to Brainstormer and I was like, dude, we at least have to cover the pop culture related stuff that relate to this, because it is this entire week's news cycle. And he was like, okay, fine. There are also other stories, like there are other topics for tonight, but it felt odd not covering the, actual, probably going to wind up in the history books, historical events that happened since the last episode. So there are two. We are doing. We've already finished one. We're in the middle of doing the second one, which we will continue as soon as Brainstormer comes back. Which, no, he's not back yet. I assume he is rebooting his modem again. And while VT catches up with the show, which shouldn't take too long, because we seem to have made pretty good time in that first article, I will then slowly but surely fill the dead air while we're waiting for Brainstormer to make a comeback. Yes, my eye is lazy. Unfortunately, it appears to have been born that way. So, my lazy eye, such as it is, also probably qualifies for disability, much like the rest of me. But that will result in me going on a fuck the disability bureaucracy rant, and ain't nobody got time for that. Even though I probably could fill the dead air with it. I just don't want to go on yet another fuck the disability bureaucracy rant, because there's only so many times I can say fuck the disability bureaucracy before it gets boring even for me. Although all this talk of my eye made my eye itch. What do you know? And we are still waiting for Brainstormer to make his triumphant return, and to thereby also share screen. And I would continue ranting, but I feel it would get repetitive, especially because we're only about halfway through that article, if I remember correctly. And I don't want to spoil the rant that is probably going to ensue again once Brainstormer comes back. Interestingly, my birthday, I believe, is next Thursday. 'Cause today is the 20th, and my birthday is the 25th. So I will be turning 29 in a little bit less than a week. The last year of my 20s. It is one of those memento mori sorts of moments that I realize that the year that I am about to begin in less than a week is the last year of my 20s. Hopefully I can lose my virginity before I turn 30. Because otherwise, that would make me a cliche. A 30-year-old virgin. And we are still waiting on Brainstormer to come back. I would sing, but given that we're covering the Trump shooting situation, I don't think there are many thematically appropriate songs for such a situation. It's not exactly a time that is conducive to the singing. And he didn't even die, so I can't even do some like ding dong scenario, but like ding dong from the Wizard of Oz, but sung ironically or something. Not that I would do that, even if he had not survived, because like I say, I think if he hadn't survived, shit would be hitting the fan from both sides. Because the those that are inclined to violence on the Trump side, however loosely, would probably be engaging in it, and Antifa and BLM and so forth would be counter protesting them, and probably committing more damage than the pro Trump side, and then the world would just be on fire in perpetuity from that point forward, at least for the foreseeable future. Which is why I'm very, very glad that he survived. Although I'm not surprised that he survived, I'm just grateful and for the most part it means I think in this instance we got the good ending of this scenario at least. Don't know what the future holds apart from that, but do know that it was probably less chaotic than it would have been if Trump hadn't survived. So yeah. Hadn't survived, our good old friend Meanie Beanie Tim Pool probably would have gotten at least some version of his Civil War eventually. And given that I probably wouldn't have survived in such a world, I am once more grateful that Trump survived. For as crazy and as surreal as this timeline feels, it's still in the clown world, the absurdity is funny phase, whereas if Trump hadn't survived, the absurdity would probably be more dark than funny. And that's not the good ending. Still think Trump probably should have gone with Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate, but I get that he probably didn't want a running mate who could in any way upstage him, and Tulsi probably could have, so that's probably why. And I am grateful that he's a young enough person that that it's not yet another case of the gerontocracy. So at least the VP pick is young enough that if Trump does die in office this next time around, we will have an actual young president for once. That's good. Because I'm kind of sick of the only 4% of all politicians are below the age of 40 thing.
Hello.
Okay, he's back. Hooray.
Hear me? Everything good?
Yes, everything is fine.
My fucking internet was a piece of shit. And it still is a piece of shit.
Uh-huh. But we got it sorted away so far, knocking on wood. So, back to the grind.
Yeah, give me a sec. Things loading.
Yep. Ooh. Where that yawn came from.
Okay. For the record, Joshua, I'm just gonna mention I honestly have not been reading Worm lately because I've been really, really busy, and every time I come home, I am just so tired that I forget to do a lot of stuff.
Yep, Brainstormer went and got himself one of those adult job things. And
Okay,
so
you mock me, but I have $1,000 in my fucking account, so fuck you.
I was more mocking the concept of an adult job than you, but okay.
All right, but okay, let me go back just so we have the
Still
full
hope that
context.
they'll eventually put you on a not fuck you shift. Because first shift, I
Look,
imagine, is kind of annoying.
full honesty, I plan on leaving this job before winter, and trying to find a job for second shift.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not bad.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm glad you're tolerating it then. But anyway, back to the grind of the thing.
Okay, let me reread the whole thing. In 2021, one of my top favorite comic writers, Jim Starlin, couldn't help but project violent imagery of the president in his Dreadstar comic, which we already read. Decapitation seems to be the violence of choice for comics we see with Gwar or Gasm while not published by the Big Two. Many comic pros aided in making this comic. Then there was Todd McFarlane's Spawn Kills Everyone that depicts Trump being decapitated along with a Red Skull. Granted, this one may be more tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, it does seem very...
I'm not gonna blame Todd McFarlane for this quite as much as I blamed some of the other people, because his approach seems to have just been treat Trump the way we treat all political figures or all people in this instance, and that is something Spawn does. So it's not warping the comic out of recognizability for the sake of shitting on Trump. It was probably just Trump was there while Spawn was shooting things. Probably.
All right. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
All right. The death of comics. There are many, many more examples of comics portraying Donald Trump as a racist Nazi in comics. Here we have a cover of Black.
Oh God.
Which has Trump as Donkey Kong.
Well, Black AF by Cuandro Saicieso was already a cesspit of ideological stupid, so it doesn't surprise me that he's here. But still, Black as fuck or Black AF is truly an insufferable piece of shit with next to no redeeming value whatsoever.
Moving on.
All
right. But there's no reason to beat a dead horse. You get it by now. It's not taking the responsibility away from the shooter. Nothing these comic pros said likely made that lunatic climb up that rooftop. But why would I or anyone want to save even a portion of this industry when it employs people like this? Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that this is coming from an industry that employs communists and bullies a man to suicide. They've been this way for years.
Okay, but the reason for you to want to save this industry, sir, is because these people are new to it. Like, most of this shit didn't exist until after 2013, which means there's a good 70 to 80 years of material and IPs and characters and worlds that existed long before these people showed up. That's why you should give it to him, because you know, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all the rest of it has existed for literally an entire lifetime before these people even showed up. And therefore something of value would be lost if we let the entire industry burn just because these asshats are corrupting and weaponizing it. My approach is the force them to stop weaponizing it approach, whereby we can go back to comics existing for their own sake and not as some kind of political weapon. But yes, that is the substantive answer to your question, because there's too much of value lost if we just let the entire industry burn for the sake of getting rid of these asshats. These asshats who showed up a little over 10 years ago.
Moving on.
Yep.
Alright. To my knowledge, no one has been fired for these comments, as many continue to work to this day. Therefore, the modern comic industry needs to die. When you have a cancer this deep, merely cutting out portions will not do. Speaking from recent experience with a family member, the sickness will spread if even a tiny portion remains. Many aspects of chemotherapy basically shocks the body into fighting back against the infection, killing the body. And that is what we are doing.
Okay, but no. There are, like, if someone dies of chemotherapy, we don't consider that a successful cancer treatment, though, do we? If someone's cancer is so bad that you literally have to kill them to stop the cancer from spreading, that is a case of medical malpractice. Even in your own metaphor, your stance doesn't really make much sense. It would be medical malpractice if the doctor went, your cancer has progressed so far that the only sane thing we can do is kill you. Yeah, no, that's not. And your implication here is there is nothing of value to save in the comic book industry. And again, like I just mentioned, the comic book industry had lived for an entire lifetime before these people even showed up. My solution is you get rid of the people who are, as you put it, cancer, and let the body go back to functioning as normal until such time as there's a relapse, in which case you treat the treatment and then you move on. Like again, even in your own metaphor, it would be sadistic if someone actually went, well, your cancer has progressed too far, now we have to kill you. It would be the equivalent of the No Great Loss chapter in The Stand, and that's not a good moral standard to hold, especially not when generations of people and generations of, you know, entertainment in general have been based on superhero comics. Moving on.
Okay. Yes, I am comparing these people to cancer because their own vitriol makes it an apt comparison.
Yes,
Your boy,
I don't have a problem with you comparing them with cancer, but as I just went over, your approach to treating said cancer is something that would gain you a malpractice lawsuit if you did it IRL. Moving on.
okay. Yes, I am comparing these people. Sorry. Your boy Zach laughs when people say, stop giving money to people who hate you, saying these people don't even know you. Fair enough. How about stop giving money to people who harbor nothing but hatred towards us instead?
Okay, but you don't have to burn down the entire industry in order to make these people specifically go bankrupt. Like, again, the essential premise of your analogy here is that the cancer has spread so prolifically that it would be more humane to kill the host of the cancer. And I simply don't agree with you. There, like, even if the big two were absolutely lousy with this shit, which is more or less okay the case, there's still the possibility that we can get the people who are ruining the industry out of the industry and then take some of the talent from independent comics and hire them for the big two so as to fix the big two and restore the comic book industry back to what it was before these people showed up, which would be the equivalent of treating the cancer and letting the person who had the cancer get healthy again. And I'm not saying there will be no relapses. I'm not saying the cancer won't come back, which is permissible both metaphorically or not metaphorically. But short of the most terminal examples of cancer, it would be malpractice to go, well, your cancer has progressed too far for us to treat, time to kill you. Unless you happen to, I don't know, be in favor of the Canadian made system. But I strongly suspect that one of the reasons you hate these people, justifiably in my opinion, is because they advocate for things like the Canadian made system. So, yeah. Your analogy doesn't even work by your own standards, sir. Moving on.
All right. Check out my superhero. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I assume shilling for his own book, which is fine, but isn't what you were talking about doing.
Oh no, that was we read the end of the article. That was something else there. So
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
But even so, even if all of the ideologues and SJWs and the neo-Hegelians were banished from the industry tomorrow, you'd still have to get the people currently working in the independent industry to try and fix Big Two. Because, sad but true, as go the Big Two, so go the industry. So we probably would be better off putting some effort into fixing the Big Two rather than watching them burn like a goddamn wicker man. That being said, yes, all of the examples given are absolutely reprehensible and probably did contribute to the insanity of the shooter. The only thing I disagree with you on is that we should therefore let it all burn, because I'm of the opinion that something of value would be lost if we did let it all burn. So we probably shouldn't burn all of it. Anyway, next topic.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Forgot to share. There we go. All right. So this is from bleedingcool.com. Motherfucker.
Pop-up ads.
What?
Pop-up ads?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. And this is why we prefer Bleeding Fool over Bleeding Cool, because, well, Bleeding Cool is cancer both in the, like, rhetorical sense, but also in the pop-ups and viruses sense.
All right, there we go. Yeah, so bleedingcool.com. It's written by Rich Johnson, published July 8th, 2024.
Oh, hello again, Rich. Please don't be a moron today.
Grant Morrison will make magic happen for you via Kickstarter.
Which is
Grant Morrison
interesting.
Grant Morrison is to help a new crowdfunding scheme on Kickstarter to fund the post-production of the documentary Magic Show. Magic with a CK.
Yes. Spelled properly. At least ever since Aleister Crowley.
Okay. Grant Morrison is to offer 3 individuals a personal magic spell cast just for them as part of a new crowdfunding scheme on Kickstarter to fund the post-production of Magic Show, a documentary described as a masterclass in the occult and created by Richard Metzger of Dangerous Minds and Disinformation, produced by media theorist Douglas Rushkoff.
Okay. I am hoping that this gets posted somewhere public, like maybe on YouTube, because I actually do think that this would be an interesting documentary concept. And there aren't enough documentaries that focus on matters occult. So it would be interesting to see the end result. I hope it's not one of those situations where the documentary is only available to the people who back the Kickstarter. I'm not going to be one of the ones who asked for Grant Morrison's spell work, because I don't know to. This is going to sound awful, but I don't know to what degree Grant Morrison is trolling as to whether he believes in chaos magic or not. Because I once believed that he was a card-carrying chaos magician, but someone who I at least trust enough to be truthful with regards to this said that he was doing it for LARPing purposes. So, you know, take of that what you will. I hope that he's not LARPing, because the world could use more magicians, even chaos magicians, even though I'm not a big fan of chaos magic. And I like the idea of someone who is artistically inclined being a magician, even when they are apocalyptic shitbags like Alan Moore. And thus I consider myself basically the anti-Alan Moore. But the world needs more magicians, and magicians who are also artists is also cool. So I hope that Grant Morrison is an actual chaos magician and not just LARPing. But as yet, I don't know. And even if I wanted chaos magic work done, I could either do it myself, using this book, or I could have my friend Chrono not do it. As it stands,
yeah, Chrono is
I prefer non-chaos magic to chaos magic, but just because I don't like chaos magic doesn't mean I'm not informed on how it works or how it would work in theory. I actually have several chaos magic books. That was just the one that was closest to hand. It's also one of the better ones. It's Hands-on Chaos Magic by Andre Vitamus. It's a good book on magic, even if you're not coming to it from a chaos magic approach. Such that I often recommend it to people who are just starting with magic, even if I have my reservations about chaos magic and expect that the person in question will also. It's still a pretty decent sort of Magic 101 book. And if you are inclined to chaos magic, you probably can even learn something from it, even if you're more experienced, like Chrono is. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, moving forward.
All right. Give me one. Okay. I'm thrilled to be part of this monumentous occasion, said Grant Morrison. Quite simply, it's the best show about magic ever made. The best, least sensationalized, most informed presentation of what contemporary magic is and how it works that I've ever seen on screen. Morrison looks forward to becoming part of the magic show community. It is time to call together the next generation of cultists, expose them to their lineage, and initiate them into the larger culture of practicing magicians.
I mean, those are some pretty hefty claims, sir. I mean, it's not like there's a surplus of occult or magic-based documentaries, but to say that it's the best, like, portrayal or expose on magic in history, that's some pretty heavy claims you're making there. I hope you're right, and I hope that I come away thinking the same when I watch it, assuming it's posted somewhere public enough that I can watch it without paying for the Kickstarter. But just making a note that is some very heavy. That is a very heavy burden of proof you've just set up there. And yes, I can still hear you. Or I could.
No, I was just asking, moving on, or?
Yes, moving on.
Okay. The spell includes a consultation with the Grant Morrison, who will work with the recipient to focus, collaborate, and aim the spell perfectly. Morrison is known for his promotion of the sigil theory of spellcasting, as first published in the Invisibles comic book from DC Vertigo, and will create a symbol relating to the accomplishment of the desired outcome on a canvas with paint, delivering a one-off artwork to the backers.
Honestly, it would almost be worth it just for the artwork. Even taking, the magic aspect out of it. Not enough to pay the, I think, like $1,500 it would cost, but it would almost be worth it just for the artwork. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of the Austin Osmond Spare approach to sigil work, which is where most chaos magic sigil work sort of derives from. A lot of people call Osmond Spare the grandfather of chaos magic. The father of chaos magic is, of course, Peter J. Carroll, but the grandfather of chaos magic, so to speak, was a Victorian gentleman by the name of Osmond Spare. I don't really care for sigil work myself, but it is Grant Morrison doing it, and even just from an artistic point of view, that would be worth it. It would also be worth it to talk to the the interview and consultation with him would be interesting. Although I'm not so sure he would be sending positive vibes my way if he knew anything about me. So it's probably best for myself that I just stay out of it. And again, like I said, if I wanted chaos magic, I would either do it myself or get my more experienced friend Chrono to do it. Although frankly, I wouldn't necessarily invite Chrono's magical influence into my life either, because I am very much of order, and he is very much not of order. So I imagine his attempts to help me would backfire like a motherfucker. Anyway, moving on.
The Kickstarter for Magic Show will appear here on Thursday, the 11th of June, so it's already up. It seeks to raise $150 in 40 days, and backers can choose from other rewards, including a limited edition poster designed by artist Dima Durchin and special acknowledgments and credits in the film.
Which also sounds interesting. I would have to judge the documentary, though, before I could... Like, I've never supported a Kickstarter before, and this probably isn't going to be the one that does it. If there were, like, clips of the actual documentary itself, that would be one thing, so I could judge the kind of thing I was supporting. But this probably isn't going to be the thing that breaks my streak of not supporting Kickstarters. And by the way, there's nothing personal about that. I just don't have disposable income to donate to Kickstarters. If I won the lottery or something tomorrow, I definitely would donate to several Kickstarters. I don't have disposable income with which to donate to Kickstarters. And when I do have disposable income, there are more personal resources that I generally donate them to. That being said, I am interested to see how this goes, and I hope it does get fully funded. Because I like Grant Morrison as a writer, even if I don't care for him or his approaches to things personally. Much in the same way as, despite the fact that I think Alan Moore is a frankly irresponsible magician, and thus I have essentially, at least partially, committed myself to the idea of being the anti-Alan Moore. V for Vendetta, Watchmen, and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are all pretty good. Tom Strong is allegedly pretty good, although I haven't read that yet. And Supreme is also supposedly pretty good, even though I haven't read that one yet either. Even if I think Alan Moore is by and large a deranged and ethically dubious magician, all things considered. He is a good writer, even in spite of himself sometimes. And he is at least partially to be thanked for Constantine existing. So there's that.
Hello?
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, he apparently couldn't hear me because he got yeeted. Unless his internet yeeted himself. Anyway, we are waiting again for him to reboot. Again. I should pick up my books, because while I was grabbing up the Chaos Magic book that I happen to have on my chairside table, my other books fell. So, fixing that. If anyone's curious, the other books that I have on my chairside table, largely because there was nowhere else to put them, is this one here, which is Secrets of High Magic by Francis Melville, Kinetic Magic by Donald Tyson, the aforementioned Hands-on Chaos Magic book, and Magic and Occult Primer by DJ Conway, which is this book here. This book is really quite good. And as far as like an introductory book to Magic, there are very few better. Several of the ones that are better I don't yet own. I hear very, very good things about Josephine McCarthy's Correa course. I've read several other books, and I own several other books by Josephine McCarthy, specifically The Exorcist Handbook and the North Gate book, which is about natural magic, elemental magic, and fairy magic, which, you know, should be a duh as to why I own that one. I also recently discovered that one of the authors of a book that I got very early on in my magical practice, which is Merlin's Magic, Merlin with a Y, The Wizard's Secret Notebooks, Joshua Free, recently started releasing his old books in hardcover, including a kind of omnibus edition, which is Merlin's Complete Book of Magic. Again, Merlin with a Y, which was his pen name like 20 years ago. And that looks, at the very least, like something that I want to own at some point somewhere. But I do not yet, because it, along with like 450 other books, are in my saved for later Amazon wish list. Because, as previously mentioned, I have no disposable income with which to buy things on the regular, and Magic is a very book intensive field of study. Not that I don't have a pretty substantive library, all things considered. It's just Magic is one of those topics that you can never learn everything there is to know, and there are always new books or new takes on old material being released. For example, this book is the original edition of Francis Melville's Secrets of High Magic, and I know there is a anniversary edition that was released a couple years ago in a quote-unquote vintage format. And as you can see by the spine here, I have gotten more than my fair share of use out of this book, and probably could use a new copy. But because there was a time when Francis Melville's The Secrets of High Magic was basically my Bible as a magical practitioner, and I got more than my fair share use out of it. Plus, in addition to being an occultist, I am a nerd and a bibliophile. So, even when magical books and grimoires aren't under consideration, there's also just general fiction books, not to mention omnibuses and trade paperbacks and stuff for comics and different things. So yeah, I have a long list of saved for later books and movies and different other items and things in my Amazon saved for later pile. I tried to break them down by subject or by the same like interest, but it doesn't always go that neatly. But I do break essentially cartfuls down into different subjects and things. But yeah, Magic is a very book intensive field of study usually. If you delve into any of the nuances of the different systems of magic or the different approaches to magic, which yes, you can be a good magical practitioner without being sort of bibliologically and like literal literally erudite, but show me a good magician without a massive library, and I will show you a magician who wants to have a massive library more often than not. Because usually the reason why any given magician doesn't yet have a massive library is because they, like me, are somewhat scrapped for funds. I am blessed with having a pretty solid library, all things considered, because a large sum of all the things I ask for Christmas and birthdays and things are books, be they comic related books or just general fiction books, or be they in large part, grimoires and magic books and things. But I got lucky in that usually when people are looking for things to get me for Christmas or my birthday, um, there will be books of some description or other in the interim. And I'm babbling, but I'm babbling mostly for the sake of filling dead air, so that we can say we filled the dead air while Brainstormer was away. I assume that comment about not getting on someone's case is in response to the portion of the live stream where Brainstormer mentioned that he wasn't reading Worm yet. If I had to guess where Dragon Turtle is at the moment, vis-a-vis catching up to the live chat. If I had to guess. I could be wrong, but I think I am somewhere near the mark. I assume the previous comment about filling the dead air was probably in the first time of the live stream that I had to fill the dead air, and not the current one, because if he just now got to the part where Brainstormer was saying he hadn't gotten to Worm yet, then he has yet to get to the second part of the live stream where there were technical difficulties. Anyway, I think that's where we are at. Someday I might have to do one of those shelf tour videos that I occasionally see on YouTube, and I know Foolish Fish occasionally does a shelf tour of his books and things. Foolish Fish, for anyone that doesn't know, which I assume is most people who would probably be watching this, is a book collector and esoteric and magical YouTuber. Which, by the way, the list of books that are currently in my Save for Later pile, a lot of them are the result of Foolish Fish's channel, because he's a book reviewer who is also a magical practitioner, and so a lot of the books he reviews for his channel are the current sort of who's who in esoteric books. And many has been the time where he or his channel has resulted in me adding more books to the pile of books that I will have to get at some point. Some books I've just come across on my own, but a not inconsiderable portion of the books that are in my Save for Later pile are either Foolish Fish recommendations or Foolish Fish adjacent recommendations. But he's a good channel to look into if you're interested in the sorts of books that people get into when they are interested in magic, occultism, or esotericism. He also has books on sort of magic theory 101, usually his Esoteric Saturdays videos. I disagree with him a little bit on his application of magical theory and or the parts of magical theory that he considers valid. He is another one that is more chaos magic adjacent than he isn't, probably. I am not so chaos magic adjacent. I am more of a animist or Neoplatonist or Hermeticist adjacent approach to magic. I believe in the literal existence of spirits and things, and not in the Jungian archetypalist approach to spirits and things. And as previously alluded to, I'm not the biggest fan of chaos magic. Not that it doesn't work, but I suspect that it works in spite of rather than because of its theories a lot of the time, as I have regularly discussed with Chrononaut many times over. I don't dispute that his magic works, but I don't think it works for the reasons that he thinks it works. And the same, I think, is somewhat true of Foolish Fish. Foolish Fish is more on the psychological approach to spirits and the psychological approach to magic, and or the like consensus reality Mage the Ascension style approach to magic as sort of probability or reality warping rather than actually materially affecting the world in that sense. And I am less inclined to that way of thinking. Again, not that chaos magic doesn't work or that no chaos magician has ever gotten the results they wanted, but I don't think the reasons chaos magic works has much to do with the body of theories attached to chaos magic. I think, frankly, that chaos magic often works in spite of rather than because of itself, as I have made clear many times over. And I am again babbling mostly for the sake of filling the air until Brainstormer comes back. And I think Dragon Turtle has, in the time of my babbling, added a few more things. Okay, so he's at the part where we're talking about the previous article not burning down the whole industry out of spite or killing off the host for the sake of treating the cancer, so to speak. And yes, DT, that is definitely a thing, and it is a regrettable thing. It's why it is important that we not give in to things like nihilism and blackpilling, because the moment you're burning down all of civilization out of spite is the moment where you are probably, to quote the Michelin Web meme, one of the baddies. It might not always be that one of the baddies approaches things from that perspective, but almost all people who approach things from that perspective will sooner or later realize they're the baddies, whether they die in the process of finding out that they're the baddies or not. But yeah, nihilism is a shortcut for finding yourself on the wrong side of most issues, as a general rule. In my opinion, anyway. Some people, for some reason, think that there's a positive interpretation of nihilism. I find that that form of nihilism is mostly powered by cognitive dissonance. Because if nothing matters, then even if you find some way of like affirmatively saying that you create what matters, you're essentially doubling down on your own personal sense of subjectivity and admitting on some level at least that the meaning you derive from things is in no way substantive, which is, I suppose, better than the more straightforward negative nihilism than it otherwise would be. But it's still, I think, a worldview founded upon quicksand and powered mostly by cognitive dissonance, so to speak. Because even if the things we want to matter don't matter, in a world where meaning is either intersubjective or objective, i.e., non optional and non subjective, at least there is a definitive answer to things mattering or not. Whereas the freewheeling anything goes, meaningless subjective people tend to keep themselves afloat on various layers of cognitive dissonance, and that doesn't strike me as a very meaningful or substantive way to conduct oneself. It seems like a convoluted method of self-deception that you only engage in to prevent yourself from realizing that everything is shit or that everything is meaningless. Which, credit to where it's due, at least the negative nihilists are more logically consistent with their principles. Although even the negative nihilists very rarely, if ever, will, upon realizing that quote unquote nothing matters, eat a bullet, which to me seems like the natural consequence of being nihilistic. Because if nothing matters, and usually nihilists will also agree to some form of utilitarianism, i.e., pleasure good, pain bad, then you then live in a world where you are at least partially admitting to yourself that your pleasures are arbitrary and subjective, and therefore non meaningful, while pain can be inflicted upon you whether you want it to be or not. And in a world where pleasure is all but meaningless and pain exists whether you want it to exist or not, for the most part, isn't the correct utilitarian calculation to a world where nothing matters and nihilism is true to short circuit your life as quickly as possible so as to no longer inflict pain on yourself and or be constantly deluding yourself with surface level pleasure that you admit can't possibly be tied to any objective standard of meaning. But anyway, that's just my usual philosophical diatribe on nihilism. I think the most internally consistent nihilists are the ones who, upon realizing that nihilism is quote unquote true, will then seek to eat a bullet or otherwise commit suicide. Not saying that that's a good thing, by the way, because I believe nihilism is false, and I believe that meaning is either objective or intersubjective, i.e., non-optional at the very least. And yes, I admit that intersubjectivity and objectivity aren't quite the same thing, and I'm not sure which camp meaning is actually definitively in, but at least intersubjective meaning is non-optional, i.e., it's not a whim or an arbitration or an impulse that you just heed because it usually relates to evolutionary psychology in some sense, and therefore is non-optional. And I think that's important for any meaningful standard of meaning, for it to be something that exists whether you want it to or not, and or be something that is non-optional. Because otherwise, all of existence is essentially one redundant game of how long can existence delude itself into believing that things matter. And that seems somewhat stupid to me. Anyway, Brainstormer's back. Hooray. You roboted a bit.
Sorry, just 20 minutes. I've been trying to get the fuck back in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're coming through fine now.
I'm not
okay.
gonna lie. I have to the fucking computer. So many.
Mm.
Oh my god.
I ended up being.
Internet. Yeah, I wonder.
Yep. Sorry.
Wonder the fuck why. Maybe it's because it's the worthless fucking.
Yeah,
Fuck.
as the old saying sometimes goes, you get what you pay for.
I'm sorry. Just.
It's fine. I understand. There's been many, many, many times where I've tried to reboot my phone and it just will not fucking connect to the internet properly.
Is that's your phone. This is the internet.
Yeah.
Somehow makes it fucking worse. Because I'm the time I'm doing. I don't want to come off as a piece of shit by having to unplug my modem every fucking time.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we get back on topic?
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
It's fine.
Fuck life, man.
Yeah. Take your time. It's an important event.
Dude, if I was allowed to vent everything, we'd be here for hours, so don't ever give me that permission.
Noted. I will respect your wishes and not give you that permission unless we have several hours to play with.
Bottle it up. I know that's not hell.
I'm just saying that if you ever need to, like honestly need to, you have my number for such reasons. But we probably shouldn't do it on air. Oh dear. Oh dear. We have lost him again. This is no bueno. And if I know Brainstormer well, it means that he is now swearing up a storm and probably punching his keyboard. Okay. Yeah. DT just confirmed that when I said the thing previously about him being at the first interval of technical difficulties, that in fact was the case. Hooray, for I was correct. However, boo, for I must now once more fill the dead air with at least vaguely interesting babbling rather than let it be dead air. And if Brainstormer decides not to come back in or message me and say that we'll be doing it, we'll pick up from here next Saturday. I will let you know, but he hasn't yet said anything of the kind. So I assume he will be coming back. But we shall see. Although I keep imagining him thrashing his keyboard out of frustration. Not that he's not justified in doing so, because there has been many a times where I have wanted to throw my phone into a black hole when it's not being cooperative. But black holes are not geographically convenient, and so my phone remains unmolested. Also because I'm too much of a prissy little posh brat to actually break my phone in any other way. The way my brain figures it, it's either we chuck it into a black hole or it remains perfectly unmolested until we get a new phone. And yeah, black holes are not geographically convenient. So my phone usually remains unmolested no matter how much I want to do horrible things to it. It would help if I could stop fucking yawning. I don't know why I'm randomly tired all of a sudden. So while we're waiting for DT to catch up, and we're waiting for Brainstormer to hopefully hop back on, I can't think of anything else to talk about, which is bothersome. Yes, now in fact is the battling times, because it is considered bad form for a YouTuber to leave dead air on a live stream, and yet I must provide some kind of content, otherwise it would get extremely dull in here. So Babel is the solution. Were that it were not the solution, but it is the solution. Hmm. Oh, huh. Between the yawning and the desire to find something worth babbling about, this is getting extremely boring. I almost feel like there should be Ben Stein clips going, but I don't have access to Ben Stein clips. And I'm not going to try and mimic Ben Stein because my voice is nasally and whiny and irritating enough as it is without mimicking Ben Stein any more than I already have. Oh, bugger me in the yawning. I'm trying to find or be inspired to talk about something, and I have yet to find anything, and now my back hurts. Okay. Again, I still think that a key feature of any, as tautological as it sounds, meaningful definition of meaning is that it's non-optional, i.e. that it exists whether you like it or not.
Okay, I'm back.
Hooray.
For how long, I don't fucking know, and I'm not gonna lie, I'll something if it happens again.
Yeah, yeah. I already explained that I didn't know whether you were going to just call it a night yet or not, but that if this continues, it's probably going to result in that. Anyway, we will try to get back on point again.
Oh no,
It was
if
being
it
tried.
persists, I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm stupid and very violent.
Yeah, I already could picture you like gnashing your keyboard once it cut out again.
1 second.
Mhm. But let's try one last time to get back on point.
All right.
We were making good time until the technical difficulty started.
Okay. I had like literally just one like paragraph.
hmm
They
And
all
then we
go
move
so
into the trailers.
yeah. Okay. The campaign is organized by Magic Show Ally and Century Guild founder Thomas Nigovan, an inaugural member of Kickstarter's Creator Advisory Council, who has been responsible for over 70 successful campaigns. In his words, Magic Show is a clarion call for everyone who can feel this acceleration of reality we are experiencing together to gain focus and learn to harness the velocity of positive change.
You might want to at least partially blame Alan Moore for that because, like I said, he created a comic specifically to act as a like starter engine for the apocalypse. So if you're anal retentive about how the pace of reality seems to be ramping up, um, blame the people who literally engaged in apocalyptic magic. But they're not going to because Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, the last I knew, were very close. So, despite the fact that Alan Moore created a comic specifically to bring about the apocalypse faster, um, he is not going to get blamed by anyone but me, probably. It's not the only contributing factor, mind you, but certainly not helping things when you suddenly decide, hey, the apocalypse coming faster would be a good thing. Yes, DT, yes, I know. There was a lot of babble while I was trying to fulfill dead air. Ben Stein. He's an actor who has a very uh, deliberately monotonous voice.
Why does the name sound familiar?
He was the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was also the tour guide in Son of the Mask
Son of the
and
Mask.
the psychology professor in The Mask.
Doctor in the yeah.
Yeah.
Bend time clips.
He misheard me, so I was clarifying. Ben Stein
Oh,
is what I had said.
oh, okay.
Anyway, on
Yeah.
with the things.
Give me one. Okay, so this is something I had sent. I think I sent. Oh, no, I sent both, right?
I'm pretty sure.
This. So this. So not there. Shit.
What?
Sorry. I don't know. Trailer. Which fuck is. Okay. But yeah, this is the official teaser trailer for Netflix anime called Terminator Zero. I had seen it. I like a few weeks ago, I had heard mentions of it, and the trailer came out like this week, so I thought we could watch it, check it out, because I would assume most of us here, or anyone who watches podcasts, are fans of the Terminator franchise. Obviously, more or less the first two movies, because those are the best.
Yeah.
and
I mean,
it's cohesive.
the third one wasn't too bad. It just wasn't nearly as good as the first two.
Right. To be fair, there's like alternate endings and deleted scenes that make like that and better, from what I've
Yes.
heard. And also, apparently, the original ending. I actually like Terminator Salvation. You know, when it's actually about the war and shit.
Mm.
And apparently, there was a deleted. There was an alternate ending they had where John Connor died, and they grafted John Connor's face to Marcus, the Terminator human hybrid. That face to him, and he was to become the symbol of the resistance. But then his Skynet programming gets kicked in, and he murders every one of the resistance, like all the leaders of the resistance.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's a bad day.
Somehow I kind of wish they went with that ending.
Mm.
No, Drano. He's asking if Stein was the guy in SpongeBob time cards.
Mm.
And, but
What foodstuffs are associated with the Terminator? I can't think of any.
let's just go with that because I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe.
dog food, because I think in the future scene, first Terminator with Kyle, it was shown that he was eating that stuff. It was canned food. I know that.
Okay. I think for the sake of not being gross, we should just go with banana, or hell, maybe Robo banana, Robo-nana.
It's been a mouthful. Clunky, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, that more in line with like RoboCop than anything.
This is also true, but banana.
Okay.
This isn't what you think it is. You can't see it. You've been on a collision course your entire life.
The world with the Terminator War.
Mm. This kind of reminds me of the Animatrix. It's actually the first thing that pops in my head. The like animated Matrix.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I know you're older than me, but remember, The Matrix came out while I was growing up too, so.
I mean, the first one literally came out the year you were born.
Yeah. Also, Dark City, which I would recommend. It's made by the guy. So.
The Dark City is kind of, in a way, a weird sort of proto-Matrix movie.
I think
like a lot of
which one came out first, though.
Dark City came out first.
Okay.
But by like I think 9 years or so. But yeah, a lot of the same style that went into the Matrix was also kind of in Dark City.
Dark City came out. Wait, what do you mean 9 years? No, Dark City came out the same year as Matrix, 1999.
Was it really? I still think it was Dark City that came out first.
Anyway, music-wise, it's fine. It sounds very similar to the original score of the Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little more rock heavy, I would say, like the guitars and like the electric guitars and stuff.
Mm.
I'm all for, because I'm some of a metalhead. I'm a rock guy, to be fair. So
I mean, it works for it's not my favorite genre, but it definitely works for the source material. So, not complaining.
I mean, they use synthesize. I mean, they did use synthesizers and stuff
Yeah,
for
no,
before. So
it works. It works for the franchise and the IP it's in. It's just not my
okay,
cup of tea.
pretentious, classy, right? Agreed, Dragon Turtle.
I'm sorry. Also, I appreciate the subtle Dresden Files reference there, DT. Although in its original format it spells pwned, and I think in the current format you have it in, it spells moaned with a W.
It looks good, like animation wise.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Sorry, I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I want metal to die, for the record. I'm just saying it's not my thing. Don't you remember? Don't you remember Butter's rallying cry? Polka will never die. PWND. Pwned. And metal will never die, I believe, becomes moaned with a W. This I did not know. I didn't realize metal will never die was a phrase before polka will never die was. I'm with Butters. If there was a metaphor, if there was some kind of concept deleting gun to the head of both metal and polka, I think I would say polka before I would say metal. And I'm not saying that that's the right answer. I'm just saying that is the answer I would give if there was some kind of concept deleting gun aimed at the head of certain genres of music. Again, I'm not saying it's the right answer. I'm not even saying it's the answer most people would give. I'm just saying it is the answer that would be given by me if I were the one to decide. If there was some kind of sadistic trolley probleming motherfucker with a concept deleting gun, and he had that concept deleting gun pointed at the heads of metal and polka respectively, polka would probably be saved over metal. If it were up to me to make that choice. Let us hope that no such gun ever exists. Or if any such gun does exist, may it be pointed at the heads of something we all can agree is shit. Instead of making us fight over whose music genre shall live in the conceptual Hunger Games. I have heard of Chainsaw Man. I don't know much about it. Other than it is a thing wherein a man hath a chainsaw, I believe, as part of his body. Weren't they does he have chainsaw hands, or is it just one hand that is a chainsaw? But I have vaguely heard of Chainsaw Man. I just don't know much about it. And we lost Brainstormer again. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. So many hypothetical ungaloids do we have? There are so many deers that I'm ching. Okay, that is more interesting than I was aware that concept was. I thought it was just kind of cheesy, but might actually have to watch that now, assuming there's a dub version. Okay, so kind of like an Etrigan the Demon situation, or more like that one franchise with the like blood grimoire that I can't think of the name of right now, where the devil was in the book. Okay, that's interesting. Why a franchise called Chainsaw Man has all this demonic content to it, I don't know, but it's interesting. Granted, there's probably some value to a pulpy guy who kills things with chainsaws, which is what I originally thought the concept was too. But for what it's worth, I prefer this version to the version I originally had in my head. Like I said, I hope there's a dub of it somewhere so that I can watch it, because I am one of those filthy, filthy heretics who prefers dubs to subs in an anime. Because I can't simultaneously follow the plot and also read the dialogue. In my defense, I do have optic nerve damage, so there is a biological reason why I can't do that. But yes, as a general rule, I prefer the dubs, even if the dubs are over the top and cheesy. In fact, sometimes even especially when the dubs are over the top and cheesy. Because that just adds to the fun of anime when the dubs are over the top and cheesy. Not that a really good dub isn't also entertaining as shit. It's just there's something unique about anime being dubbed in English that you don't get if you do the sub version. Welcome back again.
I was there happy this time. I had to unplug it for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever.
Well,
I'll get things
D-
loaded.
DT spent the time you were gone telling me about Chainsaw Man, because apparently I had not gained any knowledge of Chainsaw Man other than the fact that it is a thing with a man and a chainsaw, and DT was filling me in on the lore of it.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, Chainsaw Man. Uh, I sort of got into it briefly. It's a trip. I think you'd like it, Dalton. To be fair.
That's what DT was describing as well. And if there is a dub, I will try and
There
find.
is.
I will try and find
there's
somewhere where I can watch the dub. By the way, because one recommendation deserves another, I recently became aware of a movie that was a supernatural noir movie. It's called Angel Heart. That you would probably enjoy Dragon Turtle. Also, I don't know if I've ever recommended to you the movie The Ninth Gate, which is the movie I was watching a video essay on when Angel Heart was recommended to me. I'm not sure how much you would like it. Maybe not as much as I do, but Ninth Gate is probably my favorite movie. So, it is at least maybe worth checking out. It's a really good movie.
Sorry. Okay. Terminator Zero official teaser trailer. 20 seconds in. Ta-da.
Banana.
There's no going back. Not really. It will never, ever.
Again, I'm getting strong Animatrix vibes, and that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Like doing for the Animatrix what it did for the Matrix franchise, but with Terminator, is actually a really interesting concept all by itself.
Right. Though, but the thing is, though, if the Terminators, you can't really go like super anime with like. I mean, I realize the Animatrix didn't really do super anime stuff in it, unless you talk about the actual movies.
Hmm.
The Terminator franchise, as weird as it sounds, is actually kind of a super grounded series.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of how concept it is, but like
they're action movies mostly. Yeah.
Well, what I mean is like the Terminators don't do like extreme. They're slow. You know what I mean, right? Like they're not. You don't see them like epic jumping and flipping. And stuff.
Yeah, they're even though they probably could have superpowers more or less, if you actually think about what they are.
For the record, I do. Right. For the record, I do want to preface, because I know I'll be corrected. I mean, more the normal Terminators, not the specific, like, upgraded Terminators, can shapeshift and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, what they're showing here, it seems a lot closer to, like, the T-800s or previous iterations.
Previous iterations of Terminator. Yeah.
Yeah.
In any case, Banana.
Although I'm curious. I'm getting some Psycho-Pass kind of vibes from it, if anyone's ever seen that anime.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that, yep.
Like, just with the tone and kind of atmosphere of it all.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, I think works well for Terminator.
The Banana?
Banana.
Stop. There's only one thing standing in between you and him. Me.
So, are they doing a time travel plot? So, I'm not too sure.
Or is this going to be one of the Terminator things that is set in the future?
I mean,
It
some
it
scenes
seems
earlier,
mostly like
it,
seems
Sorry.
mostly like it's just set in the future, but I could be wrong.
I mean, there were some earlier scenes of a guy in like a regular world, like pre-Judgment Day. So
I assume that that's because this is essentially Terminator Year One, and is going to like maybe fill in the gap between the ordinary world and Judgment Day more.
So basically, what Terminator 3 was trying to do.
Yeah, or what the or what the Andy Serkis prequels did for Planet of the Apes, kind of.
That's not too bad. All right.
I'm just
Shall-
judging from the title Terminator Zero that, like, if I were gonna make a like Terminator prequel to fill in the gap, I can see why that would appeal as a title. Anyway, banana.
Banana.
I forgot that it was for Netflix for a second. Netflix's animation department, you must admit, Netflix's animation department kicks a lot of ass when they want to.
It really does. However, we also get things like what was it, G-Force? No, not G-Force. What was it called?
No, I think it might have been G-Force, the like gay spy action type franchise.
The thing you hated so much?
Yes. Also Big Mouth.
No,
Big Mouth
G-Force.
was all. Yeah, Big Mouth was also Netflix Animation's fault.
I've heard a lot of conflicting things about that.
They it is bad, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah. Okay, yeah. I confused you. It was Q-Force, not G-Force. G-Force was the guinea.
Q-Force. I was confused for a second because when you mentioned G-Force, I was like, wait, Netflix didn't do the thing about the guinea pig spies. But yeah, the gay spy thing was Q-Force because it was a pun on like queer force or something. If you want to know our further exasperated thoughts on that
I can't.
shit show,
Whatever.
it's on the channel somewhere.
Yeah, I can't remember the specific episode. I just remember you going on like so many tirades. Like we covered that for weeks, I think.
It hurt my soul. There are things which are just too bad to exist, and that was one of them, and yet it existed. It may have broken reality by the sheer fact of its existence.
Like legitimately, as a gay person, were you offended by that? Like, I'm legitimately asking.
At the time, I think I may have been. I don't I think I have mostly repressed the existence of that thing from my memory. At the time, I think I may have been. At this particular moment, I am distant enough from the concept that I am no longer seething with rage, but I do recall seething with rage at the time.
Right.
It certainly got very, very close. Maybe not quite as close as Daniel Kibble Smith's New Warriors, which we also reacted to back in the day, but it got up there, man. It got up there.
I will say the only good thing that came out of it was a lot of people creating their own versions of the New Warriors that were infinitely better. still
Yes,
using the concepts of
and I recall that we literally in real time thought of better versions of the characters as we were watching it. That was also one of the episodes where Eric Breen was on.
Oh yeah.
I believe it was Podcast of the Storm number 55. I believe it was either 50. It was in the mid 50s or the early 60s. I remember that. I just don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in the mid 50s or early 60s.
Right. Anyway, so this is the second official trailer for Beetlejuice 2. I refuse to say the name twice because I don't want to jinx it.
Yes. I think as long as you say things in the interim, you should be fine. But obviously the pause word has to be Beetlejuice.
You could say it. I'm not saying it.
Fair enough. Beetlejuice.
Right.
When you're all driving carpool and banging your Pilates instructors to fill the empty voids in your life, we'll see who gets the last laugh.
So she's definitely channeling Wednesday in that scene.
I mean, in fairness, Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice and Wednesday Addams, at least in the from the 90s version onward, are very similar characters.
So the daughter of Lydia Dietz would be very snarky.
I mean, it's kind of funny to me that she's still a goth, because goths aren't really so much a thing anymore.
I don't think she's technically a goth. Like, she's not wearing the stereotypical goth stuff. So,
I mean, that's true too. But she at least in that scene was reading as very goth adjacent anyway.
True. Liquefied insects. You know what? I like that.
Mm-hmm. The tone of this trailer is also, I think, a lot better than the first one was. It does seem to recapture the things people liked about the original Beetlejuice. Although I must say that I will maintain this. The first third or so of Beetlejuice is unwatchably dull. Like the first 20 to 30 minutes are very, very slow and
I don't know
dull.
what you want me to say that. Yeah, I don't know what you want me to, I don't know what you want me to say to that.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to once again point it out, because as much as I like that movie, I usually end up skipping the first 20 minutes to a half hour because I get so bored.
Excuse me. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
My mom grew up here, that old house on the hill.
Wait, the ghost house? Is your mom Lydia Dietz?
Unfortunately,
She's a legend.
The living, the dead. Can they coexist?
Now's my
Again, this is giving me classic Tim Burton vibes, but in a good way.
Mhm.
Like it seems like Tim is back on his A game, or at least somewhere approaching his A game, which is good because for a while now he's kind of seemingly been running on fumes. I think maybe it might be because he and Michael Keaton are working together again.
All right, Kelly.
Yep, Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
Ghosts aren't real. Only gullible people believe that kind of crap.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. I need you to help me save my daughter. But how do I know that you're going to keep your word?
I swear.
Again,
Now,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to talk a little bit about the technical aspects of this. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think he certainly knows how to use like the new cinematic stuff, like cameras and lighting and editing tools and stuff, because it looks amazing.
It does. It's very Burton-esque in the way that that's supposed to mean.
Okay, please.
But I didn't originally see something like this coming. The fact that it's actually Lydia that calls on BJ again, and that they're gonna have kind of a buddy comedy thing of trying to save
Lydia's daughter.
Lydia's daughter. I wish I knew what her name was.
I don't think it's mentioned, so.
No, I don't think it is mentioned so far. But I didn't see that coming. The way they made it look in the first trailer was almost like they were playing it as, more straight, a more straight horror concept, which I like the idea of that. And I like the idea of this too. It's not something that I would have predicted. It's not something that was on my BJ bingo card, so to speak.
Might want to recheck that term, Dalton.
I know. I initialized it to avoid saying his name too many times.
What you hear what that sounds like, right?
Okay, in my defense, I am not the one who came up with abbreviating Beetlejuice that way. The musical did it long before I did.
Fair enough.
So if you take issue with my initialism, take it up with the guys who wrote who made the musical a thing.
Although I am curious if they'll also take some inspiration from the cartoon.
I'm wondering that too, because I don't remember watching the cartoon a lot as a kid, but what I saw of it I liked. And in that, for those who don't know, in that version, Beetlejuice was almost like a fairy godparent kind of to Lydia. Like in the sense that like he was taking up the same role for Lydia that Cosmo and Wanda do for Timmy Turner in The Fairly Odd Parents, almost, which I guess given who Beetlejuice is, you could almost call him a scary godparent. But I'm ching. Though personally for me, I would much rather scary godmother than BJ if I had to choose as a child.
Yeah, that it has been so long since I've seen that.
And soon enough, it will be October again, and we'll have an excuse to rewatch it again.
I haven't seen it in like a decade, man. To be fair, I don't think I can watch it on TV anymore. I'd have to look up on YouTube or something.
Or streaming, yeah.
Because Cartoon Network's dead.
I'm pretty sure it is free to watch on YouTube, or at least one of them is. Either the first one or the second one, I don't remember. But when I looked it up around last year, it was free to watch on YouTube. I don't know if it still is. Anyway, Beetlejuice.
Right. What was what did Internal suggest again? Liquefied insects.
Because okay, I just got the joke.
Bob, you and the boys stand guard. Nobody gets through. Let's go, honey.
Recognize this post.
Never seen that shit before in my life.
I gotta say, like, Mike Keane does seem to be in his wheelhouse again. I'm not saying he's honed in a performance or anything, but it's clear that he is just having a lot of fun playing this character again.
Yeah, I have to believe that he and Tim are vibing off each other, because it's been a while since Tim felt like he was giving it his all, and it seems like maybe bringing those two back together might have made a difference. I'm hoping that Tim is going to do a solid for Johnny one of these days, and slowly start building his career back up. But who knows? Honestly, I kind of wish that Johnny Depp was somewhere in this movie, so you could have Michael Keaton and Johnny Depp both in a Tim Burton movie. And honestly, somebody owes Johnny a solid after the shit he went through with Amber. So if it comes from anyone, I would think it would be from Tim, because those two go way back to almost the very beginning of Tim Burton's career.
All right.
Anyway, Beetlejuice.
Liquefied insects.
Didn't they make a joke like that in the original movie, where they're playing charade and Beetlejuice conjures a glass of orange juice and a beetle of some description, like a dung beetle?
I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. So.
I vaguely remember that movie, or I vaguely remember that part of the movie. Anyway, onward with the innards of insects squeezed out through a juicer.
Or Afterlife.
Are you doing this?
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. I'm needed upstairs. Bob, hold down the fort. Spill your guts.
I like that it seems like they're gonna do more with the Afterlife or Underworld. Because I understand why they didn't, way back when, because shit's expensive as shit to do practically. But now, in the age of CGI, or at least augmented practical effects, you could do an entire otherworldly, you could do an almost like a world trotting movie, but instead of the mundane world, it's the underworld.
And also, the practical effects, even if they are enhanced, still look really good. And I like how it's all designed to still obviously look a lot like what was designed in the 1989 or no, it was early 80s, I think, right? Early 1980s.
I wanna say it was 88.
No, he made it like I'm fairly certain he made it like a decade earlier before.
I don't think it was the early 80s. I think it was 88.
Hold on.
Because Beetlejuice, Batman, and Batman Returns all came out like one right after the other.
No, they didn't.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Want to bet money?
I would bet money if I had any money, but I don't have any money.
All right, give me a second. I'm looking it up.
I probably won't have money until after my birthday. But
Okay, well, I feel like an asshole now because you were right, 1988. I could have sworn it was earlier. Or I might be thinking of a different movie he did.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure was, I want to say, 86.
Okay, that might be the one I confused then.
That was, I think, his first full theatrical release movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Oh, wait. That movie, Beetlejuice was only an hour and 32 minutes?
Yes, it's a very short movie.
Wow.
That's why I usually skip the first half an hour, because the first half an hour is boring. If your movie is that short, it bugs me that there's a half an hour's worth of cuttable material there.
Okay, dude, you are... I appreciate the creativity, Dragon Turtle. But that last one, I'm picturing that, and I'm somewhat tasting it now.
It reminds me of those toys that was like a confectionery thing. The was it Dr. Dreadful's Mad Scientist Lab or something along those lines.
Something like that.
It was like an Easy Bake Oven but for boys, and the gimmick was you could make like candy insects and stuff.
Yeah. I'm also thinking of it was like this cartoon in the 90s. It was kind of obscure. Creepy Crawly. Like it was like kind of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meet Creepy Crawlies.
I remember growing up Creepy, which was a show about a teenage girl who was raised by insects and stuff.
I remember
that was on the Discovery Channel, but I don't remember the one you're talking about.
It was very 90s. It was very I just can't remember what the hell it was called, but
Anyway, our nostalgia aside, Beetlejuice.
liquefied insects.
Who wants to go first? All right, I will. See, I'm willing to do the work.
Swear the afterlife is so random.
Good, I think, for my dream. Really more nightmare material.
Confronting the unknown, conquering your fears. There's nothing harder.
Oh, Astrid. Okay, that's her name.
Okay, Astrid is the daughter of Lydia. Very good. Now I know. I wonder if we'll ever see who the father was.
Shall we?
Yep, Beetlejuice.
Liquefied insects.
What the Thank you all for coming to this special occasion, but right now we'd like a little privacy.
This looks like a good Halloween movie.
It's in early September.
Yeah, so probably so they can play it all through Halloween season. But early enough that it's out of the way of some of the Halloween horror movies.
Yeah. I don't know why, but when you brought up... My mind just automatically thought of how I could reboot Halloween Town. When he said Halloween.
Halloween Town's amazing, and I watch it every year. I should say I watch the first 3 every year. I avoid watching the 4th one because the 4th one kind of sucked.
Now I'm trying to think of how I would do a Halloween Town reboot.
It'd be hard to do because I'm not sure you could replace Debbie Reynolds as Agatha Cromwell easily.
Fair, but I mean, it's been Halloween Town came out in the 90s, right?
Yes, it did.
So it would be removed enough within the younger generation.
I believe 98, if I had to guess. I think I remember when I was like 4 years old watching when it first came out, which would have been 98. Or 99.
And like, I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to think. Like, I mean, that seems like a really that and maybe Nightmare. I mean, I know effectively they're timeless,
Mm-hmm.
but
I can't imagine that there are many kids who haven't seen the Halloween Town movies, at least the first 3. Then again, someone thought it was a good idea to make a sequel to Hocus Pocus, so maybe I'm wrong. And I still think that if you're gonna ever do a live-action Nightmare Before Christmas, Michael Dougherty is the only one you could get to do it well. Because we've already seen what he can do with Halloween because of Trick or Treat, and
maybe,
of course,
sorry.
Christmas with Santa.
Sorry. I was just thinking. Okay, so maybe not a reboot, but maybe a sequel.
Like maybe this time Marnie is the mother, or actually, how long has it been? She could feasibly play a grandmother now, probably.
Okay, no. Well, if we're going actual chronological, and if it is in '98, she was a teenager. She went through high school as well.
Yeah, and the 4th one was about her going to college, which was in like 2006 or something.
Hold on.
Although they changed the actress in the 4th one, which was dumb. One of the many things that was dumb about that movie.
Give me a second. But the premise I had was that it was, well, for one thing, she moved to Halloween Town. And
See,
her
that's-
kids, hold on. Kids grew up in Halloween Town, and they're visiting the human world. Kind of an inverse, sort of.
I mean, that's an interesting concept, but I don't think it would make for a very good Halloween movie.
During Halloween?
Yeah, because they've already played with the inversion trope with Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge, when Calabar Jr. casted the gray spell on Halloween Town.
So you were right, 2006 Return to Halloween Town.
Okay, so yay! I am batting 1,000 for dates tonight. Yay! But okay, so 2006. So it's been 17 or 18 years because my youngest brother was born in 2006.
Okay, so roughly she could have gone. Okay, if she was in college in 2006, she was already an adult, roughly early 20s, right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
She'd be in her 30s or 40s now.
Mm-hmm. Probably 40.
Although she would probably look younger because Halloween Town is one of those franchises that goes with the witches are immortal trope.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Debbie Reynolds is dead, so the grandmother can't cameo unless we do like deep fake type stuff.
Nope.
Because she actually died, I believe, the same weekend that Carrie Fisher died. Because Carrie Fisher is actually Debbie Reynolds' daughter. This I did not know, or I didn't know until it happened, and then she died like days later, and her last words were, "I want to be with Carrie." So.
Why the fuck did you have to say that, man?
Because my brain remembered a thing, and then my mouth kept running, and then it got sad.
Uh,
I mean, it's either sad or happy, depending on how sentimental you are about the bond between mother and daughter. Like they essentially went out together almost, or very nearly.
I mean, that's fair. I'm just still, man.
I mean, it's not like she didn't live a full life. Debbie Reynolds, I believe, was in her like late 80s, early 90s at that point. Because I know Carrie Fisher was in like her 60s.
You're not wrong, General.
I choose to see it as kind of wholesome. The idea that a mother can't live without her daughter, and so she, went off to be with her, so to speak. One of those I really hope there's an afterlife scenarios. Not that there's any shortage of those.
Okay, now I'm also trying to think of like how I would do a sequel to Beetlejuice.
Like a third one?
Well, no.
Or just remaking this one?
Sort of remaking this one, I guess. Like if I was put in charge of making a sequel to the original Beetlejuice from the 80s.
I honestly, depending on how good this one is, the one we just reacted the trailer for, I honestly wouldn't mind there being a trilogy, as long as Michael Keaton and Tim Burton still want to do it. Like,
okay, kind of a weird idea, but Beetlejuice taking on an apprentice.
That might, like, okay. Tweaking this idea to kind of have it line up more with this one. Imagine if Lydia has another child, but it's a son, and BJ kind of takes him under his wing.
So we kind of get kind of somewhat inspired by the cartoon.
Yeah. Like, again, Beetlejuice being almost a scary godparent to this boy who is the son of Lydia Dietz and the sister or the brother of Astrid here. Because like Beetlejuice does have good qualities. He's not like mustache twirling the evil. He's just sort of chaotic and trickstery. So I can see the idea of him like having a like Uncle Beetlejuice approach to this kid.
But I was thinking, the idea I had for like The Apprentice obviously would have been like a younger, more. And honestly, funny enough, I would have gone with like design-wise, it would have been more like parodying and inspired by like 80s fashion.
I mean,
Like,
there's an idea
because-
there.
Well, like I said, he's an apprentice, so he kind of has to be a younger ghost, recently deceased.
Mm.
And I say relatively, obviously, but I'm picturing him dressed like kind of like Michael Jackson from Thriller a bit.
Yeah, I get where you're going. Honestly, speaking of hope for this movie, though, I hope we get more lore as to how the underworld actually works.
'Cause I have a feeling, well, like it does look like obviously there is a bureaucracy, that's never going to change anywhere.
Yeah.
But that makes me wonder. There have to be higher entities, and I'm not talking about like the recently deceased or the deceased.
Yeah, but like not strictly like straight up non-human entities.
Yeah. But so far, we have just been seeing deceased.
The living impaired, so to speak.
That really does sound like something a PR thing would do.
I want to say I'm borrowing that from Casper, the 1995 movie.
That was a good movie. I'm not gonna lie. I like that.
Yeah, I want to say that it's Casper who came up with the idea of the concept of the living impaired, because the dad in that movie was like, instead of being a Ghostbuster type figure, he was an ecto-psychologist, effectively.
Therapist
He
for
wanted
ghosts.
he wanted to help people get over their unfinished business and pass on.
Mm-hmm.
Which, God damn it, I love the bizarrely adult premises of movies from when we were kids. God damn it, I love the time I grew up in, and obviously everyone has rose-colored glasses for that time and everything, but like we got away with like the premises of stuff we watched and were raised on were so much more adult than they had any right to be, and I'm so grateful that we grew up on them.
They were. As Eternal, we prefer the term mortally challenged, Doom Eternal.
Yeah, but the mortally challenged term specifically refers to demons, though, which is why I got the joke, but I didn't really like that phrasing, because the premise of demons is that they were never mortal. So calling them the mortally challenged is a bit weird. I would have gone with something like the infernal immigrants, or the people of the people of the lower reaches of reality, or something along those lines. Same basic idea, just more targeted in on demon kind rather than just the mortally challenged, because that to me implies like someone who was once alive and is no longer, just like living impaired does. But a demon, unless you're dealing with like a Hazbin Hotel scenario, is usually something that was never mortal to begin with.
There was a play. I don't know if anyone knows these guys, but they're called Star Kid. They're like a theater production company that do a lot of like videos on YouTube, like actual like they, put their own plays on YouTube.
Not to the best of my knowledge.
I think you'd like them. They actually have like a whole lore series about they have a whole lore involving like eldritch abominations that are just complete and utter assholes, called the Lords in Black.
Huh.
It's all music, by the way, which is up your alley.
Yeah. Obviously, as a core tier 2 winter, I have to say in unequivocal terms, death to all the outsiders. But yeah.
There is a play that they released like last year called Nerdy Prudes Must Die, where the antagonist is a jock bully dude, right? Stereotypical.
Okay.
Who dies from a prank by the nerds that he tormented, and vows revenge, and he comes back as a vengeful spirit and kills a couple of them. And
Mhm.
the actor who played that character, gave real like Beetlejuice kind of vibes, like in his mannerisms, his well, actually like a bully, jock, all that, right?
Sort of like Beetlejuice crossed with Biff Tannen from Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Or maybe the one blonde dude, member of the Alpha Betas from Revenge of the Nerds, if he were also dead.
But I could totally see that being like the like for that apprentice character I had mentioned in my idea of a Beetlejuice sequel.
Interesting.
But
Though of course you know that if I were in that situation, I would be binding and enslaving that ghost, and supernatural himbo intensifies. Because I am not above romantic necromancy, goddammit.
well, he's in the chicks, so
Again, binding and enslaving. Romantic necromancy. If I have to, goddammit, I will.
that's okay. Not going to address that because that is a can of worms I do not want to open.
Which reminds me, speaking of weird movies from when we were kids, have you ever seen the movie Can of Worms?
No.
You
I
would
read the
probably
book.
I
read the
you would probably like it. It's more sci-fi oriented than fantasy-ish. It was a Disney Channel original movie. But it was one of those weird ones from when we were kids.
Anyway, well, I know it's Saturday, but I am starting to feel tired, so we are gonna call it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Dragon Turtle. If I can't find my significant other among the living, then I reserve the right to resort to romantic necromancy. Goddammit!
Do you though? Do you reserve the right to?
Yes, I do. I reserve the right to engage in romantic necromancy if I can't find a living significant other.
Wouldn't that make you a necrophiliac?
Yes. A romantic necrophiliac necromancer. The story writes itself. Like, I actually, someone please, for the love of God, write like a absurdist parody, like a Discworld-esque concept for this. This is too funny now. I need this to be a thing.
Look at how weird you are sometimes, dude. So, to end on a very weird note, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
remember, your romantic ambitions are never dead if you are willing to go for the dead. Cheers, guys, and fuck off.